And streaming live.
Okay, is everybody ready? Okay, see good thumbs up. So we'll begin the meeting here. So welcome to the regular scheduled Planning Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. It's around 6, and this is being held by our favorite technological wizardry of Zoom. We should, if you wish to join the meeting, there will be the method to join will be on the bottom of the screen in a few minutes when we open public comment. So we have a full panel tonight, so all the commissioners are present. So I'll call the meeting to order. Do any of the planning commissioners wish to? Do you have any announcements or anything you wish to say to begin the meeting? Okay. At this point, I'll open public comment. And Scott, do we have the access numbers?
I am looking at it right now.
Okay. And so this is the time that we normally have public comment for items that are not on the agenda or those items on the consent calendar. So if you wish to speak to something, then raise your hand. Sig, do we have anybody waiting to join, or?
There's nobody in the queue at this time with their hand raised.
Okay. Then we'll close public comment and move on to the next item. And this is, we have no presentations. So moving on, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have one item. This is the current and advanced planning processing list, and we have a staff recommendation to receive and file. Does anyone wish to comment on any of the items on the list? Okay, may I have a motion?
I'll move to receive and file the current and advanced planning processing list.
Second?
I'll second.
Come on, somebody step up.
I'll second.
Okay. There you go, Michael.
Nobody cares.
Okay. Any comments or discussions? Okay, Scott, could you call the question then on this?
Certainly. Commissioner Stewart.
Aye.
Commissioner Lucas.
Aye.
Commissioner Ingraffia.
Aye.
Commissioner Barone.
Aye.
Chair Brewer.
Yes. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're moving on to item number B1. This is case number CUP 20-05, CDP 20-012. And this is the site location is 1148 Market Avenue in Morro Bay, and this is the approval of a conditional use permit, CUP 20-5, and coastal development permit for CDP 20-1012 for a new construction of a new 2-story home with a ADU and a JADU. So I think, Nancy, you're up on this. Do you have a staff report for this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
I'm going to share my screen.
Do we have any ex parte communications on this? Okay.
Yes, Jerry, I talked with Karen Biagini.
Oh, okay.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me and you can see the slideshow.
Coming through fine to me.
Okay, so as Jerry mentioned, this is a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit and coastal development permit for a single family home at 1148 Market Avenue. The site is on Market. It is 6,633 square feet. The blue arrow pointing at the green house is the existing house on the site. It's a 1923 older home, and there is an outbuilding behind it, which you can see from the inset aerial photo. The existing buildings have been reviewed and they don't meet the criteria as historic resource. The existing home, as part of the plan, will be moved to a new foundation and be permitted under an admin CDP as a accessory dwelling unit. The zoning is R2, planned development, Beach Street specific plan area, and this allows duplex residential and single family residential primarily. The PD requires special consideration and review, and the specific plan area requires frontage improvements. The review and approval process is a little different. I think this is the first project that's come through under the new government code rules for accessory and junior dwelling units, in that they need to be processed administratively, including if they are part of a development with a project that requires a discretionary process. So in this case, the full development is an ADU, which is the relocated existing home, a JADU, both of which are not part of this public hearing. They are both going to be reviewed and approved and permitted administratively for a CDP, and a single family home, which requires planning commission approval because of the zoning and the PD overlay and the Beach Street specific plan area. So the single family home, which is in the back of the site, so in this image, Market Avenue is on the left, is 2 stories with 1,635 square feet of living space, plus an attached 2-car garage. The floor plan, as you can see, is a 2-car garage, entry and laundry area with stairs to the 2nd level. There's 2 bedrooms and a shared bath on the ground floor. The 2nd floor is entry stairs and hallway to a living room and kitchen, which also opens up onto a 2nd floor balcony and a master bedroom suite. The project elevations, again, this was submitted together, which I think will be typical for future applications that meet this criteria for 2 different processes. So the home is in the back, and the ADU and the JADU are noted as not apart. East and north elevations for the home. And the city development standards for this zoning and this in these overlay zones, the proposed project, the single family home, meet or exceed all of them. And I did put a note there for lot coverage, what the lot coverage will be with all of the development completed. Neighborhood compatibility. Most of the homes along that street are older homes with garages in the back, and the homes with porches close to the street. In 2018, the property on the north side of the subject property was developed as a single-family home with a detached garage in the back. And in the upper image on the right side, you can see one of the 2 homes that was developed in 2017 with 2 dwellings, each a 2-story detached home with a garage. So the project as designed is compatible with other homes on the street, including those recently developed projects. And the staff recommendation is for approval of the CUP 20-05 and the Coastal Development Permit 20-012 pursuant to the findings and conditions of approval included in the Planning Commission Resolution 17-20. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Do we have questions for staff? Jesse?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused about the not apart when it comes to the junior ADU. So help me understand this. So the ADU I get ministerially being approved, administratively, I should say. The junior ADU is required to be constructed within the walls of the residence.
Correct.
So the residence is required to meet the PD. And I don't know that it matters for this project, but just kind of as a broad, moving forward here. So the way I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, and tell me how I'm wrong. If the house is required to meet the PD, and the JADU is required to be constructed within the walls of the existing house, which is under construction. So, I mean, that, we're getting caught in the fourth dimension here, but I don't see how the JADU is not part of the PD.
So, I would love to tell you you're wrong, and I think that you are, but I agree with you because it's a little of chicken and the egg. So if you just built the house, then you would have to build this extra space that you didn't identify what the space is proposed for, and then later you could convert it to a JADU. But the government code, which became effective January 1, specifically addresses this, and it says that a permit application to create an accessory dwelling unit or junior accessory dwelling unit is submitted with a permit application to create a single-family dwelling on the same parcel. The permitting agency may delay acting on the permit for the ADU and the JADU until the permitting agency acts on the permit application for the single-family dwelling. But the ADU and the JADU shall be considered without discretionary review or hearing. So it is a little tricky, but I mean,
so what I take that to mean is that means that you can build the house, you can build the JADU regardless, but you have the dwelling has to be reviewable. So I mean, per our PD standards. So I mean, I don't want someone to, and this doesn't apply to this project. So I mean, I'm kind of speaking off the topic here because I don't want the people thinking they talk about their project. But let's just say somebody decides to build something in the PD that looks great for the dwelling, and then a not so great looking JADU that's attached, and we are required to approve it. And I just don't think that's what that says.
It does say that, but the city can apply. We can apply our design guidelines to them. So thankfully, we have them because we can use them, and we would use them. If they were not consistent and the house was already there, and they come in, with an application to staff for the ADU and JADU, you would not see them, and we would be processing them. If they were, stucco exteriors and the main house was some sort of siding, we'd be like, that's not consistent. And we'd also look at the neighborhood around there, and it wouldn't be consistent with what's there as well. So we would probably require those things to be those exterior materials to be changed.
Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of along the same lines because I think this sets a precedent for other ones we might be seeing. I completely agree that we can't deny a project because of the junior accessory dwelling unit, but I think we certainly should be able to talk about the nature of the way it appears in the community, especially if it's in a special district like this. But I was concerned about the landscape, because what does the landscape belong to? Does it belong to the house project so that we can talk about that? And I'll talk about that in the comments later on, but I just wondered, does the landscape plan go with the new residence?
I would think that it does. I think that's a requirement of PD, is you're allowed to look at and require landscaping.
Yeah, and the main use on the site is a single-family home. You can't have an ADU and a JADU without it. So that all the landscaping is on the table for your review.
Okay. Michael, you read? Okay. Yeah, see, the question I have is just on square footages. I didn't see, I probably missed it, but I didn't see the square footages laid out on the plans that we've got. So we got, is the JADU?
They're on the plans, but I specifically didn't include them in the report for the ADU and the JADU because we're not supposed to be discussing those.
Okay.
I can secretly tell you what they are. JADU is 500, and the existing house is a little over 1,000, so 1,008 square feet.
Okay.
And then the new home I did put that in my report, and that's, I think, 1,635.
Okay, isn't the ADU only required to be 50% of the main house, or is?
Not right now. A detached ADU can be up to 1,200.
Okay. It's just, yeah, it seemed, I was under the impression it could only be 50% of the main house.
If it's attached, that's correct. And someday if we change I think that's one of the things at this moment that a local jurisdiction can make a ordinance to regulate, but we currently don't have one. So we're going with 1,200 square feet for a detached.
And then the separation between units is the required 10 feet?
Yeah, yes. 6 feet. I think it's 6 feet for dwelling to dwelling. No, you're right. It's 10 feet, and it meets that.
Okay, and then all the other setbacks are?
Yes, the project meets all of the setbacks.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, then we'll open the public comment for Zeke.
So the applicants are on. They don't have a presentation, but they're available to answer questions.
Okay, does anybody else wish to speak to this project? Zeke, do we have anybody else in the queue?
Yes, sir. There's just a moment. It is Sean Green. Sean, you are on the line.
Thank you, Planning Commission. I just wanted to commend the applicant for moving forward with this very reasonable project, despite some of the many ways that the city has kind of abandoned and neglected the Beach Street district. Not only has the sidewalk completion project been abandoned, but the city has also squandered $2 million in PG&E undergrounding credits specifically designated for this district, and also neglected and abandoned the Surf Street stairs recently, which had basically left the only pedestrian access to Beach Street, which I went down and looked at today. And the slope of Beach Street sidewalks on both sides is greater than 15% and as high as 25% in some places. And so, again, I want to thank the applicant for coming forward with this project despite how the city has treated this district. And I think this also is a good opportunity for the city to cheaply complete the Market Avenue sidewalk on the east side and add a crosswalk at Surf Street and then proceed all the way to the Surf Street stairs, where that project should absolutely be reinstated to restore coastal access for that entire neighborhood. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Zeke, is there anybody else online?
Nobody with their hand raised at this moment.
Okay, then we'll bring the public comment to questions for the applicant. Does anybody have questions to the applicant? No, it's seeing none. Then we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission. So now's the time for comments and questions and discussions. Jesse?
Well, I guess I'll go first. So I think it's a good project. I like it. I think it's well designed. I'm ecstatic that we're getting 3 units there. I'm not sure I understand, I think is the right word, how we're getting that junior ADU out of a newly constructed house in a PD and not be able to review it. But, you know, I don't, obviously there's, this isn't the project you want to hold up because of it. But I mean, I think that really needs a little bit further vetting. I don't think that's what the junior ADU ordinance says, but I'll look again tomorrow. I'm pretty familiar with it. I've been looking at it rather extensively. Chicken and the egg thing. You know, I don't think we want to get in the business of building shells, you know, or, you know, accessory use that are unusable or unused storage units, and then you have to convert it later. I don't think that's the intent of the ordinance for sure. So anyway, I have a little bit of a problem with, on a future project, having to turn the whole thing down because part of the JADU, the JADU part of the project may not be what is desirable. So the only alternative the commission would be to deny the whole thing. So I think there's a solution in here that, I don't know, that's yet to be talked about. So. Okay.
Michael, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that on all the existing pictures, it looks like Beach Street's kind of challenged for parking. And in the images, the front of the existing dwelling is shown as parking in some of those images. So I just wanted to be sure that we're approving the landscape plan as shown and that there is no parking in the front yard of the accessory dwelling unit, because I think that's the only way I could support this. I don't want to see the whole area paved. I think it's a great project. I like the fact that we're getting 3 units there. That's the kind of affordable housing. But I also agree with Jesse that I think it's critical that we look at all of these things. I even think the single dwelling unit, if they're adding a porch, which I don't have any trouble with, but I think when we're in a special design district, we should be able to look at all of these with the caveat that we can't use that as a mechanism to disapprove building either of those 2 additional units. I think it's critical we build those, but it kind of bothers me that we're in a special district and we couldn't comment on the appearance of the accessory dwelling unit. And I think, Nancy made a good case and Scott, why we should be able to talk about the junior dwelling unit's appearance, not its status, but its appearance. And I hope we can go forward with those types of things. Otherwise, I think we're going to be finding people want to build the junior accessory unit and expect everything to go through by caveat, because you can't not approve the junior unit. So I think there's an aesthetic part that transcends the lack of ability to technically protect the junior accessory dwelling unit. If we didn't like the way it appeared, I think we should be able to comment on that.
Okay. Susan or Joe, did either of you have comments? Susan?
A response to that, that Michael and Jesse were talking about. Staff earlier said that, we have created these design guidelines. So we have things in place so that when a project comes before them, staff can look and say, this really doesn't fit, or you have preserved this somewhat historic appearance of these houses, but your JADU looks like a Frank Lloyd Wright. Whatever they want to do, I think we can hopefully trust staff to make those judgment calls and work with, because I know they have in the past worked quite extensively with certain clients to help them redesign something so that it does fit our guidelines. So I agree it would be nice to see it. I appreciate that we were given this opportunity and the plans you showed us, even though we don't have to make decisions on them. We got to see it and see how it all fits together. I love that they're preserving the original building. Unlike what it says in the historic report, it's not being moved to the back of the lot. They are also keeping an old oak tree that's on site. And I think they're going to preserve as much as they can of the lumber from that funky shed in the back to be reused. So I think it's a pretty terrific little project. I certainly understand the concerns with, in these special areas, maybe not being able to look at the whole thing more closely, but I have a certain amount of trust that it can be done right. So thank you.
Okay. Joseph?
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I don't think I have anything to contribute. I mean, it's clearly compatible with other homes in the neighborhood. I applaud that it's making a significant contribution to affordable housing. I like the design of it. I sort of bemoan the disappearance of a quite little Morro Bay cottage, but I realize that the historical ordinance doesn't have any bearing here. And I also think in a special district that, the Planning Commission should have some say in the design decisions, and I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that confirmed. But I think it's a great project, so I'm very much in favor of it.
Okay, I pretty much echo the comments that I've heard so far, and it seems to me that the design guidelines, those were done before the ADU and the JADU laws were put in effect by the state. So maybe there's a upgrading or amending that we can do on the design guidelines that will attach to these, and we'll be able to review them through that as a condition of approval on these. Not so much as the use, but as, for compatibility with the neighborhoods. So, Scott, is that a mechanism that we would have available to us if we modified it?
What, to amend the design guidelines?
Yeah, to be able to review these JADUs and ADUs that are.
Yeah, the Planning Commission we can't take it to a public hearing. We can't take it to a hearing. We can't schedule a hearing for it. It has to be approved at staff level. That's what the law says. We don't have any ability really to do that. Certainly, a relook at the design guidelines, if you want to have some specific to ADUs and JADUs in the future, could be done. I mean, happy to, take a look at that once we get to a point where that's possible.
And then if, even if it was approved at staff level, rather than have the hearing on, have a public hearing. So at least that would give you the mechanism to be able to review the compatibility, at staff. And
I think we have the ability now to do that. We have existing design guidelines, and because we have them, we can use them and we can apply them to the ADUs and the ADUs. So I think we're fine there. I don't think there's an issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're comfortable with that. It just, I understand what the Planning Commission's saying. I get that you want to have the design review that you're accustomed to, especially in these areas. But the states preempted us, and they did it on purpose. They wanted these to be approved quickly, and in fact, there's a shot clock on how long we can take to review them, except when when they're in relation to a single-family house that does require Planning Commission review. Only then can we even delay the process to approve it. I mean, the state's trying to facilitate housing, and that's why they're removing the discretionary process from the cities. They're doing it on purpose, and have been for several years now.
Okay. So,
can I interject a question real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry? So, Scott, hypothetically, let's just say the dwelling existed, the dwelling that's under review today, and there was an ADU in the front, and they proposed an addition that is the JADU. How would that work? Would they have to do an addition to that single-family residence and then apply for a separate permit after the completion of that addition, and then convert to a junior ADU? How is the city handling it? I know the jurisdictions are doing it differently.
They would be able to apply for the JADU permit, assuming it met the requirements for a JADU.
Which is to be included under the roof of the existing house. So I think I don't think that they could do it if they had an existing house and they didn't have existing space to convert to a JADU. I don't think they could add one.
Yeah, I think there's a limitation to the amount that you can extend beyond the existing footprint of the home for the JADU.
It's 150 feet.
Thank you.
I thought it said within anyway, the question was in a PD. So hypothetically, if they were doing this addition that is the JADU in the PD, would it require Planning Commission review?
No.
The addition?
No, okay. But I think for your example, say they had a single family home and a 4-car garage, and later they wanted to convert one of the 2-car garages into a JADU, that would be all administrative.
Right. And I know jurisdictions are all over the place. I mean, we have jurisdictions within this county that are doing where crawl space counts, where garage conversions count, where, other things count, and people are doing it differently. So, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering where we land on all of these variables. I know we don't have a ton of crawl space around here, but, that's going to come up. So.
Okay. I think we're ready for a motion. Would somebody like to take a shot at it?
I could do it.
Okay.
I move to approve resolution number PC 17-20, a resolution of the Morro Bay Planning Commission for approval of a conditional use permit, CUP 20-05, and coastal development permit, CDP 20-012, for the proposed new residential construction project at 1148 Market Avenue in Morro Bay.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Happy to second.
Okay. Okay, Jesse, we'll give you the second on that. Okay, any discussion on this? Okay. The one question I should have brought up earlier that, on the site improvements we were talking about, what improvements are they going to include, Nancy? Were they required?
Are you talking about landscape or frontage?
Frontage.
Frontage improvements. Public Works, one of their conditions is to require frontage improvements.
Okay, so that's curb, gutter, and sidewalk?
Yes. And street.
Okay. Okay. And then there's parking on one side of the street, but not the other. We've got the horizontal parking, not the parallel parking.
That's in front of the commercial businesses across the street. And then I believe that there's curbside parking on the residential side.
Okay. Okay. Any other comment or discussion?
Just that I think the citizens of Morro Bay have to kind of bear with us when they see something that may not look as aesthetically pleasing as they're used to, and the ADU in the front luckily looks good in this case, but we may have an ADU in the front that doesn't look good, and they're going to say, how did this planning commission approve this this project in PD, and we're going to be with our hands tied. So
we're going to say, don't blame Jesse. Well, sign up front.
It's the commission. It's all of us.
Not Jesse's project.
Okay. Could we call a question on this then?
Commissioner Lucas?
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart?
Aye.
Commissioner Barone?
Aye.
Commissioner Ingraffia?
Aye.
Chair Lohr?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion passes 5-0. Okay, so moving on to B2. This is Plan Morro Bay, General Plan, Local Coastal Plan Program update. And this is citywide. So Amy, did you have or Scott, did you have a presentation for this? Or
Sure, just, want to tell you that we're excited to finally bring back the General Plan Local Coastal Program. It's been a long road to get here. We've a lot of trials and tribulations through the process of putting this together and getting comments, from all the outside agencies, Coastal Commission and that type of thing. And we finally got it put together. We also have the EIR for the project out on the street. You were notified of that when we sent it out last week. First day of review was Monday this week and goes for 45 days through the clearinghouse. I think I will just go from there and turn it over to Amy to start the presentation, and then we'll get into the review of the document.
Okay, Scott, before we do that, though, do we have to, because the EIR is going out for review, we can't comment on that at this point, or?
You can if you want. I mean, we're going to bring back at a meeting and have a review of the EIR prior to your recommendation to City Council, and we'll bring Rincon consultants who put together the EIR to provide a presentation to you on that document. It'll be once the comment period, public comment period, is closed, and we've addressed all of the comments that have been received, both from public agencies and the public. So then you'll have a full document. We've posted it early so the public could review it and provide comment. And we've received comments to this point from both public and outside agencies.
Okay, so I think we'll just focus on the Plan Morro Bay then. So Amy, are you doing the presentation on this, or?
Yes. Hi, everyone, members of the commission and Chair Lohr. Like Scott said, it's pretty exciting to be at this point. Let me pull up my presentation. One second. Okay, so this is our first meeting to talk about the adoption or hearing draft of Plan Morro Bay. We do anticipate that this will take several meetings. As Scott mentioned, the draft environmental impact report has just been released for the 45-day public review period, and the zoning code is continuing to be drafted and will follow these two documents. So we want to do a really brief presentation. We want to spend most of the meeting getting your questions and comments. There's a lot that has gone into the revisions. So we wanted to give a high-level overview of the changes since the public draft. So that was released in May of 2018, and we did meetings and received comments from the General Plan Advisory Committee, from members of the public, from your commission, as well as Coastal Commission staff. And we do have summaries of comments that you've all seen, and those are publicly available on the city's website as well. We tried to enumerate all of the comments that were received and organize them in the order of the document and note whether anything had been changed in response to that comment. We wanted to focus a little bit on the comments received from the Coastal Commission staff. They did comment substantially on all of the elements and sections that are part of the local coastal program, and that's most of the document. Key comments included comments regarding the organization of Plan Morro Bay. So there you will have seen that there are different structure to each of the elements. The implementation actions are now located in each element, and if we really get into the details, you'll see that some of the pieces that used to be in an implementation action have now been combined into the policy level, and a lot of that is directly in response to Coastal Commission's comments. And we have the implementation actions in the elements themselves, as well as in the table or matrix in Section 5. So we wanted to maintain that table because it will be used for implementing the plan as we move through the years. But Coastal Commission did want to see those in the elements themselves. So key topic areas where they had the most comments had to do with public access, coastal dependent uses, environmentally sensitive habitat or ESHA, how bluffs are defined in the city. They asked for a section, and it ended up in the land use element, where policies focusing on the Embarcadero would all be located. So that's been added. They did have quite a few things they wanted to talk about related to parking, agricultural resource protection, natural resource protection, visual resource protection. And then finally, in the final section, the glossary, we made sure that the terms that were in there were consistent with the Coastal Act. In many instances, they had comments about that. And I believe that, yep, that is my short presentation. So we want to make sure that we have enough time to get all of your feedback. I don't know, Chair Luer, if you have any questions for me or the other staff before we launch into that, or if we want to talk about, how we approach the discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions about the presentation.
Okay. I was thinking we would just go through section by section and approach it that way. We would, if people had their comments, we would comment on sections so we don't get lost into in a morass of flipping back and forth between two different plans and three different matrices on comments that have been made by different people. But let's go ahead, and if anybody has any questions or comments on the overall look of the document or the overall approach, I guess now would be a great time to talk about that. So we got Jesse and Michael. So guess Michael, if you want to go first on this.
Yeah, the biggest question I had was, it is a massive amount of stuff to go through. And as I was looking at the the three separate correlation sheets that are out there. One that I was really most concerned about was the Coastal Commission comments one. And it just seemed that so many of the comments and then edits made seemed like it was still open-ended. So I'm not quite, it'll say things like, need to talk to the city about this. And I'm not quite sure, is the draft after that talk to the city type of thing? So we actually are seeing a resolution of what the Coastal Commission comments chart says? Or is it for us to parse as part of our discussions? Because I think there's like 150 line items here, and I think I circled like 50 of them that seem to me like things that we probably have to take a look at. Really,
we did review all of the comments that Coastal provided with Coastal staff, and in some instances took direction from Coastal staff, and others we rejected some of the changes that they requested, gave them reasons why. There's a myriad of conversations that we had over it, and sometimes they wanted one thing from us, and then we talked through it, and they were fine with where we were at. And other times we made minor edits to things that they had concerns about. It just sort of depends.
So the way the draft is set up, you're not looking for us to comment on any of the things that seemed like open issues within the Coastal Commission comments section.
Not unless, when you looked where that section has now been revised, say, in the document, and you have questions about how it was written, we gave you those. I mean, the comment sheets are really a tool for you to help you review the document, because if you looked at the redlined draft comments from Coastal, it would be very difficult for you to follow what they were doing. And oftentimes you would see large sections that had been deleted, or would appear, at least to you, to have been deleted. And what really happened is they took it, deleted it from one section, and put it someplace else. That was a fairly common theme. So it got kind of unwieldy looking at the redline version of that, which is why we put together the comment sheets for you. So it was a little bit easier for you to kind of generalize the comments that came from Coastal, and then you could look at those pages if they were things you were interested in to see what the language now looks like. And you can compare it to the draft that you originally looked at. We gave you both of those too, the original document pages plus and now the new document pages where those comments were addressed.
Okay, Scott, let me ask you.
I would just say in the edits made column, that's where it should reflect what the ultimate change or no change was. So I haven't had time to look through the whole column, but I think that one should show a resolution. I don't think it should say still needs to discuss, but we definitely, if you want to point any of those out, we can definitely take a look.
Okay, Scott, let me ask you a question just on process here too. Jesse, I'll bring you in here in just a second. After we have planning commissioner comments, should we open the meeting up for public comment?
Yes, I was thinking we would take preliminary, comments, questions from the commission, just on overall what we were doing. Any thoughts that you had related to, the documents as you reviewed them, to help us get into the review process, and then at that point we'd stop, take public comment. We do have a few folks in the queue, and then move on to the actual review itself.
Okay, so let's. I think that's a good approach here. So Jesse, you had a comment?
I actually had those same two comments, A, about public comment, and then B, about some of the wording in the edits made column makes it seem like it will happen, and it has not happened yet. But I think that was addressed. So I think we go through it and we'll just figure it out. So.
Okay, Joseph.
My understanding is, because this is my first exposure. I mean, my time on the Planning Commission to a document that's so aspirational as this. So I guess it's a basic question. Is there anything that prevents the city sometime in the future from doing something that's not referenced in the plan, or actually doing something that would seemingly be prohibited explicitly by the plan currently? And I'm trying to get the idea of, is there a distinction between this plan and what we typically understand as city ordinances law?
So this is sort of the guiding document for the city and how we go about doing all aspects of what cities do. So we won't be doing things that are inconsistent with it, because it would violate the document. So if we do want to do things that are different from what's in the document, then we have to amend the document to make them consistent with the things that we want to do. And if those changes were, related to Coastal Act issues, we'd have to get the okay from Coastal. If not, the city could just adopt them on their own. It's why you have the little wave symbol in there to denote sections that apply to that are Coastal Act related, as opposed to the other sections that are not.
So there's a significant deterrent value, because certainly nobody wants to go through the time-consuming and expensive process of going back to the Coastal Commission to make some sort of alteration. I get it. Okay.
Susan, do you have any introductory comments?
Not at this point.
Okay. I guess what I have, just a question, kind of just an overview of what our society has gone through in the last 8 months. And it just seems like some of the items that we've been reviewing and we've put forward in this document have accelerated, exponentially, such as, just lately I see a massive movement of houses that, residences that have been on the market are essentially selling before the people even put up signs and stuff like that. So I see a transition really going forward on converting second homes into primary residences and stuff, because of course people want to move here. And so Scott, I guess, and Amy, I guess the question is, if the changes that we've foreseen that would take up to 2040 happen within the next 18 months or 2 years because of this, the COVID crisis, will we be able to adapt this document to handle it?
I think yes. It's a living document. I think where would be the community that doesn't, over a 20-year horizon, amend their general plan? That would be odd. Usually you have multiple amendments through that time frame, because you can't foresee the future exactly. We're doing the best that we can, and that's what a lot of the background documentation here was to sort of get a large picture for what's happening in Morro Bay and to get public input on all of that, and then we crafted the document. Certainly things could change. Sea level could rise faster than we anticipate in the document. There could be a lot of things that happen that require us to make changes to it. Thankfully, things like that, specifically sea level rise, we're required to monitor it over time, so it probably won't sneak up on us as quickly, but who knows?
Yeah, but I can, like one of the things, I can see the population change easily by, 1,000 more people within 6 months, 18 months, on that. So then we're bouncing up against Measure F, within a year, within 2 years, rather than within 20 years. So,
and we would have to take on addressing Measure F if that were the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the housing element will be updated, every 8 years. So
which we just
separate schedule as well.
Yeah, which we just did.
Right.
So, okay. So at this point, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment and see if there's anybody out there. Zeke, do we have anybody that's wishing to speak to this item?
Yes, sir. Scott Green is on the line. And Scott, you're live.
Hey, Planning Commission, I just want to chime in once again. Well, regarding the general plan, I continue to believe that the scope of it is so vast, exceedingly vast for a town of our size. But I do want to thank the members of this Planning Commission and staff who have actually read every page, because there's a lot of blind faith in you to read these documents, and we trust that you are, and so we thank you for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Next, please.
At this time, there is nobody else in the queue with their hand raised.
Okay, great. So let's bring it back to, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission.
Excuse me, sir. Erica Crawford just raised her hand.
Okay, so we'll open up public comment and allow her to speak.
Erica, you are online.
Oh, hi there. Thank you so much, Planning Commission Chair, Commissioner Lur, and all of the commissioners. I'll echo what Sean Green said, and just thank you so much for spending so much time on this document that is so instrumental for the future of the community. I also just want to place a lot of value and honor in the thousands of hours of work put in by volunteers from the community through the GPAC, by staff, the many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that have gone into preparation of this document. So we're very much looking forward to your review of this document. And I just wanted to chime in and let you know, thank you very much for your work.
Okay, thank you. Let's check again. Do we have anybody else wishing to speak?
No, sir. At this time, nobody has their hand raised.
Okay, great. And yeah, I do want to thank the community for all of the input that they've had, and a lot of it very, very insightful. And all of the meetings that had taken place to get this document to this point. So, okay, so number one, the first section is the introduction. We have, introduction 1.11, general program 1.2, and then up to statutory requirements on 1-4. Do we have any comments or questions on the intro?
Could I just ask one thing back to the EIR, just in response to Ms. Winholt's letter? I think everybody on the Planning Commission got that. No, it came in a little late.
It was sent to everybody, yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify the timing of things. My interpretation was this plan has actually been based on a tremendous amount of environmental studies that were done to get us into the process and through the process to begin with. And presumably the EIR is reflecting a lot of that work that's already been done, but also that the City Council will be seeing it along with and before their approval of the general plan. So Ms. Winholt's comment was that state requires the EIR to be done to inform the general plan. So if staff could comment on that, or is that not?
No, it's written in response to preparation of the general plan, largely.
Okay.
And again, the public review period for that started on Monday and it'll go for 45 days. There'll also be review opportunities related to the EIR as we bring it forward to Planning Commission and City Council. So pretty much anywhere along that timeline we would be taking comment on it. Certainly, it'll be something that's reviewed at Planning Commission when you make your official recommendation to City Council on both the general plan and EIR, and then it'll be reviewed by Council for adoption of both the general plan and EIR. So, and again, part of the process of us taking those comments in, such as Ms. Winholt provided, those will be handed over to Rincon, who's the environmental consultant, and they'll be drafting a section of the document that responds to all of the comments, every one of them that we get. And so those will be something that we bring back to you, and hopefully we're done with this process, and we'll just be waiting, for you to finalize your review of the EIR so that you can forward that on, and so you can have a full vetting of the environmental impact report at a meeting. So. Okay. That's kind of the intent there.
Scott, let me follow up on that question on this. What happens if an item, or have there been any items that have come up in the EIR that will fatefully impact this document?
So we can make changes to the documents, and there can be, if it is something that that requires us. There could be changes that result out of the comments that we received that require us to reroute the environmental document in EIR, and that would have to go back to the clearinghouse for another 45 days. That might happen, or maybe we're able to respond to all of them, and the document adequately addresses all of the issues that are raised, and you can make sort of somewhat, I guess, non-substantive changes to it to to pick up issues that are raised. It just there's a myriad of things that could happen, as part of the comments that we receive. So you kind of have to wait to see what you get, and then go through it, and we will explain to the best of our ability, or answer to the best of our ability the questions that are raised.
Okay. Do you think that the cultural resources issues have been fully vetted out in the IR? I see that as a potential quote unquote landmine that could come up.
We released it, so we think that it adequately addresses those items. Yes. Could things come up that aren't necessarily addressed in the EIR? Sure. Yeah. We could definitely receive some additional comments that require revisions or something along those lines. Not uncommon.
Okay, so back to the document. So the first 5 pages any comments on those or questions? Okay, then moving forward, we got the local coastal program on 1.5. The LCP, the land use plan on the introduction here. The zoning code and local implementation on 1-8. Relationships to other local plans and documents and other laws, 1-9. Relationships to areas outside the planning area on 1-10. Any comments or questions or discussion on any of those items? Okay. Then on 1-11, I actually have a comment on the California State Parklands. Should we include also the State Park Marina, which seems like it's a valuable resource to me, and it seems like that's a valuable resource to everybody. It wasn't included in that paragraph. Should that be included as a resource that's stated in here? So Amy or Scott?
I'm sure we could. I think it was probably just meant to be included within the state park that's at the south end of the city, but we could call it out.
Yeah, it's a unique situation because it's the only marina that is within the state, the only saltwater marina that's within the state park system. And at one point they tried to eliminate it. Basically, they didn't want to manage it. It went through a whole process, and finally there was the mechanism that we have. Also, it needs dredging and continual upgrade. So I think it's a resource that should be specifically stated in this paragraph or elsewhere in the document. So I'm not sure if this is the best place for that, or. So Scott, do you have any thoughts on that?
We could add reference to it. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Is there other commissioners? Can I at least get a couple of you nodding your heads? That's a good idea. Okay, I got one of you nodding your head.
I vote yes.
All right, there we go. Thank you.
Michael's nodding.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Moving on.
And then on that item, then Scott, on implementation items and stuff, further into the document, would there be any places that we should state that it should be, there should be a goal to keep it maintained and operable?
I think we talk about that elsewhere. Sorry, my PDF is frozen. I apologize. I'm trying to search for it, but I know we discussed the dredging quite a bit during preparation.
Yeah, we did.
I'll keep looking.
Okay, I didn't see it anywhere else, but I could have missed that. Because that was a major project to just get the center channel dredged. And it was and it's a major point of coastal access. I think there's 132 slips there, plus a public dock, and then also kayak launch and stuff. Small boat launch.
Chair Lou, are you referring to dredging of the State Park Marina? Is that what you're looking for?
The State Park Marina, yeah, the State Park Marina and the channel to it, the navigational channel to it.
Okay, yeah, I don't see that in the document when I keyword searched for it.
I'll check the background report also.
Okay, so where would be the best place for an implementation item action for that to be, or?
Probably where we talk about, this is just one idea, is maybe in the coastal section. I think that's in the public safety element.
Well, coastal access would be one place.
Or coastal access.
And visitor serving.
It's also mentioned in the land use element in the section regarding coastal dependent uses and commercial fishing, so potentially there.
Okay. So maybe if we could state it clearly, and then, again, where we have an implementation action where it would be appropriate to insert it there also, so that it's noted in this plan and we can refer back to it as a validation to continue the dredging and keep the channel navigable. Okay. Do I have concurrence on that? Okay, I see a couple of heads nodding, so thank you, guys. Okay, so moving on from 1-11, 1-12, we have the Morro Bay demographics, 1-13, and then on 1-13, also on the future, I already brought that up in the general comments, but in the future, I think COVID's going to change the way that our second home usage is going to happen here. So as long as this document's flexible enough to deal with that, I think we need to be just aware of that too. So 114 and then 1-115. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or discussion on up to 115? Okay. And then on, I've got a note here on 115. I know we've talked about it in the SOI previously, but Scott and Amy, it doesn't seem to be the, so this is on the planning area on 1-14, is the first mention of the sphere of influence, SOI. Michael and I both brought this up on previous comments, that I still don't see any way we have of identifying and addressing problems that are in the watershed area for the Morro Basin, which is what we're going to be relying on our continuing groundwater supply when we eliminate state water. So is there any way that we can influence the direction and the development that happens in that watershed that is going to be that we're going to be really depending on in the next 20 to 40 years, rather than just having it as an SOI?
SOI just indicates areas the city would be willing to annex.
Right.
Any type of development that would happen out there would have to be evaluated as part of that process. I'm not sure where you're going beyond that.
Okay, so one of the things that's happened out there is that, at some point we had over the last 10 years, there's been development of avocado ranches, avocado orchards that were not there before. They one of them, or a couple of them specifically, dropped wells into the aquifer there, and then actually, created problems for the RV park there further down the line. So what I'm worried about is somebody coming in with a major water usage, such as let's just say a water bottling plant to sell Morro Bay water to the world. And they drop in a huge straw and suck out the aquifer that which we're relying for our community water supply further upstream outside our community, boundaries. So how can we influence that? How can we have a say on?
So the picture that you see there, that's what is it? It's figure one. Is it figure one? Introduction one. So the larger black line that goes along the outside of that. Hold on a second. Sorry. Can you see that? Yeah, that goes up to about the Rigetti property, doesn't it? It goes beyond that. Okay. So the black line is the city's plan line, and that is the area that we coordinate with on development. I mean, we get applications on anything that's submitted in that area from the county for review. The SOI line, which is the areas in red hatched here, those are just simply areas that the city would be willing to potentially annex in the future. Right. So, I mean, do we have necessarily any say out there? No. And then what you're talking about when you're talking about people pulling water out of the ground is water rights. And I'm not going to get into a conversation about water rights here tonight. Okay. Okay. But there is not a mechanism that we can use, or at least we can have any influence on the aquifer that we're going to be relying on. Oh, I mean, that's why these types of things get adjudicated all the time. I mean, water rights are a big deal. It's, what do they say? Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. Yeah, it's true. And it's usually the person upstream that has the rights. Oftentimes the case. So, okay. Yeah, see, I just want to note that I see that as a fatal flaw in this system. It's not a flaw in the document. The city doesn't have anything to say about what's out there, other than we have this plan line, which the county agrees on through our sphere review, that they will send us documents related to development out there so we can see what's happening out there, as opposed to the opposite, where they don't send us those types of things. So what would be the consequences? I'm sorry to stay on this, but it seems like an important topic to me, so I'm going to push it. So what would be the consequence of moving that plan line to incorporate the watershed? To move it to the ridge lines up to Devil's Gap area up there? I don't know. Never thought about it. It's not something we've evaluated to this point. It's not something that's part of the previous review that we've done on this. It would require additional study. Okay. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I agree. I think it's a planning flaw. It's not a flaw of this document, but it's a planning flaw of the way that we look at parsing who's responsible for what. I mean, it's absurd to me that we provide services for those folks up 41, but they're not part of the city, or those folks down in the little segment that parallels Route 1 as we go towards Slope. They're in the plan area, but, and if there's a fire there, they're probably coming from our fire department. I don't know if our police do anything up there, but, the watershed is a much more reliable way to talk about environmental issues. I'm sure we're going to be impacting part of the watershed to the east of us, and the county folk are impacting the 41 watershed pretty heavily. But I think there was a comment in here that addressed what Jerry and my concern is. But I think it's good to go on the record is at some point we should, whether it's LAFCO or whatever, there's got to be a great understanding of these things really don't function based on political jurisdictions. We should be looking at natural ecological zones to make some decisions.
Anybody else have a comment on this?
Yeah.
Joseph?
Well, actually, it may not, well, maybe it's indirectly a comment on that. I have a question. One of the reviewing groups, I think, asked a question about extending the sphere of influence, and on one of the sheets that tabulated all the comments, there was, I think it was a caution that you had to be careful about extending a sphere of influence because it would be possible for a private owner to achieve annexation without a city approval. And I just wondered if there could be further explanation if that's true and how that could be achieved.
So when you put something in your sphere of influence, you're saying that you're willing to annex it. So in some places, not in this county, but in some places, not in this county currently, but in some places, you could just simply go to LAFCO, submit your application for annexation, go through the process without even really talking to the local jurisdiction, and they potentially could approve it for you. Here, LAFCO would never do that. They would want to make sure that we're on board with the annexation. We've already said we are, because if we adopt the map the way that it is here, it says that's what we're willing to do, and those folks can bring forward. But we would probably require them to bring forward whatever they're going to do, meaning project-wise, as part of that process. And LAFCO would probably support us on that, as opposed to just annexing the land tomorrow and coming in without a development application or anything like that.
So is the answer then that it would be possible in Morro Bay for property to get annexed into the city limits without a citywide vote or a council vote?
So that's the other piece of it. We have Measure H that's in place that says you cannot annex land for anything other than public purposes without a vote of the citizen. Okay, so then that would mean you can't do that here in Morro Bay. That's what our ordinance says. LAFCO and most other folks that have reviewed the issue find that action is illegal. And annexation authority is placed squarely on the shoulders of cities and LAFCOs, and that's it. And doesn't enter the referendum, area. So it's not something that's referendable. And there's case law on it. So, but that doesn't change the fact that the city's municipal code has that policy in it. So that would have to be changed in order to not go through that process. And that would be a tough decision for, say, city council members to make, because the citizens did vote for that. So not something that could be changed simply, I wouldn't think.
Okay, let me get back to my question here again on groundwater basin and watershed. Hasn't the state of California required groundwater basin monitoring? I'm specifically thinking of the Paso Robles water district, basin district that's up by Australia River and stuff because of the overdraft up there. Weren't they required to monitor wells and then put restrictions or in that watershed basin over the last couple of years? And wouldn't this area fit into a groundwater basin district or watershed district?
They did do something along those lines out there. I haven't paid attention to it in quite a while, so my memory's a little fuzzy on exactly what they did do. I don't know. Maybe you're more familiar with it, but
yeah, from my memory,
my understanding is that it's because they were being adjudicated by the state.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not a good idea to monitor your groundwater. I think it's much better to be proactive, but I think that's why it was required there.
Okay. So maybe that should be something. So if we wish to do this as a city or wish to do this as a drinking community, would that fit into this document proposal for that, or would that require a different process?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay.
We don't have the ability to force anything related to stuff outside the city limits. So I'm not sure what you're looking for. I mean, if we're having issues along those lines, like somebody came forward with your bottled drinking water project, right. It was out in the county and we got notified of it. Certainly we could go to the county and protest that. And then if we didn't like the outcome when it went through the county's approval process, we could take them to court. And then, we would go into a court and they would force the issue of water rights, and then it would be decided there. I mean, that's how most water rights are decided.
Okay.
When they're in dispute, they go to court. I mean,
yeah, because I knew in the Paso Robles district they put a moratorium on all vineyard improvements or even replacements on that till that got adjudicated, and they got a groundwater plan for that basin completed. So, okay, so I guess we really don't have the mechanism to deal with that. Then is what I'm hearing. Okay, so then moving on from 1-16, does anybody have any issues with the with 1-1, the figure 1-1, the map? SOI? Okay. 1-17, the organization, and then that goes, and 1-18 goes into the second section. So are we good through till there? Okay, so moving on from on our vision from 2-1. To 2-8, we're into the next session. Do anybody have any questions or on the vision statement? Okay. So 3A, blueprint introduction. So that's 3-1, 3-2, 3-3. So I just want to bring up again the community design, and just there's several implementation items about the commercial design districts and stuff and community design districts. Just a question. When do you, Scott, when do you think that those will be proposed? I know everything is so much up in the air.
I think, once those are implementation things to develop, so those would be one of the things that we bring forward to council as part of a goal setting session once the document's adopted.
Okay.
I mean, certainly be probably one of the top ones because it's one the commission's been talking about for a while. And I would say, even possibly before that, because when my understanding is when we go through the next goal setting process, I think it's going to be a 4-year one. And at a minimum, it'll be 2. And the city council is going to meet with the planning commission because we didn't do this last time to get your input. So you'll have a more collaborative process this time. That was sort of missed the last time we went through this. So that's my understanding about how that's going to take place.
Okay, great. So then 3-3 and 3-4, and then we're into the next section. So everybody good with that? Okay, so moving on to 3-5, land use, overview and scope, 3-6, 3-7. And so I have a note on 3-7 about the resiliency approach. And so so Amy or Scott, could you just let me know where, just have a note about where in this plan, just for information, is the greenhouse gas reduction policies stated in the, and also items such as offshore wind development stated in the plan.
Offshore wind is in the land use element, I believe. Let me double check that.
I think it's in, I had it written down as ED1, let's see, ED3 / ED.1. Where is that? It's under economic development. It does come in.
Greenhouse gas reduction strategies are in the conservation element under goal C4.
Okay.
Don't we have a finer grain on that with the climate action plan?
Yeah, one of our implementation items is to update that.
Yeah, but does that happen more often, frequently than the general plan, right?
Correct.
We have to do that.
And we're starting the initial conversations of this right now. I mean, Cindy might be able to expand on that, but we are starting the conversation.
That's what I was wondering was what's the correlation? Because we can certainly. The one thing I get a little concerned about is there's these other documents that never get mentioned here, and that it would be nice to say something like there is a climate action plan that talks about some of these issues too, where it's appropriate to state that so that we don't think we have to do everything with this document because we have another document that's more nimble to take care of it. Like Jerry was talking about, how fast can this react? And the climate action plan reacts a little faster than this one can. So,
right. The climate action plan, it's identified as an implementation action. I think we're required to update the CAP every 5 years, if I'm correct. And the city's partnering with some of the other cities in the county through a greenhouse gas stakeholders group. We're starting the initial conversations on updating that CAP, trying to pool our resources. And that the general timeline right now is soon, essentially after we update the general plan LCP, we'll move into updating the CAP.
Okay.
And the energy uses are mentioned in the land use element on page 330. I think we made it more broad. It doesn't specifically mention offshore wind there, but that's what I'm remembering, that it got generalized.
Okay, so could we do an IE on that as in that section as offshore wind and wave generation? Because we have both of those fields are available to us and would be incredibly beneficial for economic development for the harbor.
Sorry, let me also say that on page, I'm trying to find everything as you're asking, and there were a couple of questions that came in at once. So page 4-35 in the conservation element also talks more specifically about the potential for offshore wind. There's a renewable energy production and use paragraph there.
Okay.
And in section 5, we have a more general implementation action. So that's ED3. That might be partly what Susan was mentioning, maximize energy from renewable resources and work to improve the affordability of energy and telecommunication resources.
Okay, so do you guys think that that's sufficient, or should we include wave generation in that specifically as an IE, as an item, or is it simple enough to do renewable energy?
I think we might want to stick with renewable energy. My concern was a little bit, and I think it was in this land use section as we move forward, that we don't lock ourselves out of what may be coming in the future that we haven't even dreamed of yet in terms of some of these renewable energy kinds of things, because there were certain statements about what could and couldn't be done, say with the Vistra site, that it should be, public use and visitor serving and all that. And I think it might be a greater good for our community and our county and our state if we are able to include, the continued use of it as some sort of energy production transmission, but with renewable energy sources and clean energy sources. So that was a concern I had as I was looking at the way certain things were written in land use, especially on the waterfront. And with the wastewater treatment plant area too.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Susan. So maybe et cetera at the end of statements might be appropriate. So we're not locking into specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But okay, so that's kind of a general on that. Okay, so moving on, so that was on 3-7, 3-8, 3-9, 3-10. On the added schematics there for calculating floor area ratio and the FAR ratios, I think that helps out a lot for just to know that you added in there. So I appreciate that. Thanks for doing that. It shows you how much FAR can reduce the developable area on a site. So we're at 3-10. Anybody else on anything up to that point? Okay. So we have existing on the ground land uses. I remember there were several people who were asking about corrections on the land use maps. Scott, have those been taken care of, or the comments were that this was a LAFCO map?
This is a SLOCOG map of land uses on the ground. So nothing that we have control over. The city's land use map is a little further down, I think, in here, right?
Okay.
We tried to clarify with the titles to make it more clear that this one was different than the proposed land use map.
Okay. Okay. The land use designations from 313. Well, let's go to 317. I guess that's, or 318.
Yeah, I had a comment about that. I guess in light of what we just did tonight, where we've got a residence that has 3 residences on it now. I mean, with the way the state has changed their regulations the last few years, is it realistic or to say that 0 to 4 dwelling units per acre is still valid? Because we doubled it with the accessory dwelling unit. And now we've kind of tripled it with the junior dwelling unit if we have those things. So I'm just wondering, does that seed some kind of expectation that's really erroneous as to how many dwellings we really might be putting in place? I know we've got a build out, so it's not like we've got a lot of lots where we're going to come in and see a lot of triple houses built. But I think as you folks monitor the permits coming in, the number of accessory dwelling units must be in the hundreds since we started this process. At some point, it starts to move that decimal point over a little bit.
State law doesn't allow the ADUs to be calculated as part of the density. It is something that can be considered in CEQA, like in the general plan EIR CEQA.
So when we go to the chart that shows the build out number of units, we can't split it there either.
No, they aren't. That's what the state law says, is they're not to be taken into account in terms of the base density on a parcel.
But they are taken into account according to Measure F, though, correct? Am I?
Yeah, that's based on population. So
yes. So we have a disconnect between between our housing element and what we're even supplying as far as dwelling units and population.
The thing I was interested in was the correlation between table LU2, which then says total estimated dwelling units in 2040. So if the 6573 don't take into account 500 accessory dwelling units as to what the capacity to house people here is, we're sort of fooling ourselves as to what's actually happening. I mean, that's the only thing I'd get concerned about. Is it's fine to have a double accounting somewhere, but at some point somebody's got to add those things up, because it's going to make a difference in the way we think about how the city's populated.
And we do, like you said, track them. Right now, from a density standpoint, we can't do that because the law doesn't allow us to do that. And I'm not sure how you would account for that separately in the document, other than in a way that wouldn't be confusing to people.
You know where you could put it on table LU2, you have your total estimated dwelling units, which is the main units we can count. Right next to that is total estimated households, which could be a bigger number. So that could account your ADUs and junior ADUs, because they are additional households, which then could track into your population count. So...
And we'll be able to truth that over time, because the housing element cycle is shorter, right? It's every 8 years. So, if we're potentially off on the numbers you see in the table related to what Susan just referenced, then we'd be able to pick that up and increase the numbers and the projections that we would have, into the future, I think, through that next housing element cycle.
I mean, I just wonder about the laypersons out there who look at something like this. Could we have an asterisk there that says, does another asterisk? What does that asterisk say? I don't know where that asterisk is going, though, in the intensity, but could there be another symbol there that says, or in the single-family house, this low-density residential description, tallies do not include accessory dwelling units. So someone's actually aware that these numbers don't include those things explicitly.
Well, I suppose we could add that. Amy, can you think of any reason why we shouldn't do that?
No, I probably want to check into it with some other folks here, but I don't see any reason not to off the top of my head.
Okay, are we good with that then, Michael? Okay.
Are the rest of you interested in that? Okay.
Yeah, I think that needs a little clarification, because we have density, population, and dwelling units that are all different.
So we'll look into providing the clarification and to make sure we're not running afoul of any law or whatever.
Okay.
It's, good practice, what have you.
On the table LU1, the land use designations, we have a density and intensity ratio, and we have FAR there, so we have both. Where did the ratios for FAR come from? For the different land uses, the different designations, like general light industrial, you have a 0.5 for the FAR. So
I believe we worked with the city on coming up with what made the most sense there.
Because we didn't have this number before.
Yeah, so it's current general plan practice to include FAR.
We actually did look at these with, I think, both GPAC and Planning Commission.
We did just, I guess I'll reiterate my comments. It seems like these FARs are way too, we have our setbacks, we have our density, and then we have this FAR ratio on top of it that, for like general light industrial, your maximum usage of the site is only 50% of the whole site. So you have so we're trying to bring in light industrial, but we're only allowing them to build a 1-story on 50% of the property. Whereas if you go from their usual setbacks, you'd probably able to go like on 80% with a single floor. And then if you do a second floor office space above that, then you're only going to be able to do, like, if you stack them, only 25% of the square footage of the property. It just, To me, these seem really restrictive.
I was just wondering too, do these anticipate the zoning changes that we were talking about coming in the zoning code?
Yeah, we worked with the zoning code team on these numbers.
I didn't go back and look at that, but my sense is some of the ones in the commercial districts aren't they going to be higher than that with multi-story buildings?
Well, let's take the old Sun Bulletin building, in the Beach Street area. That essentially is covers that lot almost from setback to setback. So we're 0 setback in the front and 5 foot at the most on the side, or 0 setbacks on the side. So that would be in the general light industrial area, from what I understand, or marine industrial. So we're only allowing them to build on 50% we would only be allowing them to build on 50% of that site. It doesn't seem like it would be a profitable proposition for anybody to develop something like that.
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, this is the Planning Commission reviewed this, amended these tables, I think, like several of these numbers before. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think we actually had higher numbers to start with. If I go back and look at older iterations of the document. So, I mean,
okay.
I certainly it's open to discussion. I'm just saying we derived these numbers from working with you.
Right, and this was I think this was one of my comments from previously too. So, if I remember correctly, but I
mean, I'd have to go back and research the minutes and stuff from those meetings to figure out where this came from. I don't recall off the top of my head. Part of the problem for taking so long to get through this,
right.
review.
So, so Amy, on other communities that you've dealt with on these general plans, are these in the ballpark for other communities? Say, what does San Luis Obispo have?
I would have to take a look. I know that Morro Bay is pretty unique, so I think that was part of how we arrived at some of these numbers. And like Scott said, I too will have to kind of retrace the story of how we got to these. I think we have that information.
Okay. I'll. Does this concern anybody else, or is this just me? No.
I didn't see anything in the columns that we had talked about this as an issue before. I didn't look at my marked up one from the first go round, but I'm just concerned. It just strikes me some of these seem low. The ones in the commercial districts that we're talking about, multi-story, mixed use in the city core. It strikes me those are. It's talking about the non-residential components, and maybe it's the idea that in the mixed-use areas, the dwelling units are the pieces that are additive onto the FAR, and that gets us to what the zoning was talking about. Because I do kind of remember the zoning better than I remember this, but I remember it in terms of floors, heights, rather than FAR. So, the mixed use there of 1 FAR for non-residential and 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre, that sounds like that's an additive thing that would maybe get us to the 2-3 floor type thing we're talking about in some of the areas.
That was the discussion that we had in relationship to the mixed use concept.
Once again, I'm sorry, guys, but this is fairly important, or it seems to be. The general line, the coastal dependent industrial. So you're talking about industrial production where you're not really requiring a lot of parking, but you're going to require a lot of warehouse space or manufacturing area that's undercover. So if you're only allowed to use 65% of your property and 50% for general light industrial, it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get a profitable business development on those properties.
I don't think most of our light industrial properties exceed this.
Yeah,
I think most of them. I think most of them are less than 0.5. I mean, there's some like I think Sun Bulletin Building is a good example of one that's probably over this sum, but that property does extend beyond the footprint. But that one probably is a little bit larger, certainly.
Okay. So could I just have you research that a little bit more? And
yes.
Just so that we can check it. I just don't want to have
been a while.
totally.
So.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was trying to look on the proposed or the land use map, and there's really very few of the light industrial spaces. There's a few to the south on 41 going up. There's that area south of 41 on South Main Street that has some there, and then there's the Quintana zone. But I'm not seeing too many things besides that because the other zones are into the trying to find what the Dynergy site there is. That's the
but even coastal dependent industrial. That's a lot of the Beach Street area and stuff, and it could be the Dynergy property too if that becomes a manufacturing plant for wave generation machines or something, wave generators or something.
Jerry, I'm not as up on all this as you are, certainly, but it seems to me in our community we kind of resist having 100% or even 75% lot coverage in an industrial. We want permeable surfaces. We want, maybe smaller building footprints, more outdoor usages, more green space around things. So I wonder if that's where some of these, what appear to be smaller ratios of use of a particular property come from.
See, Susan, that's where the setbacks come in. And that's where the zoning and the setbacks come in. And the FARs, what drives me nuts about the FARs is if you're trying to be more efficient with your building, you're penalized. Because if you go 2 stories, then that cuts that only allows you to go half as big with the building. When the build with the construction, a 2-story construction is much more efficient than a single-story construction. So just as long as we're in line with other communities, I'll get off of that. But it just seems like these were pretty small, or pretty. Okay, Joseph.
Yeah, I have to admit, I never, settled on the issue that you brought up. But the common discussions about trying to bring more employment and employment opportunities to the city. I mean, we really should be careful that we're, not inadvertently, discouraging people from either coming or expanding. I think we could do well to get a little more information on, what's the typical sort of industrial activity that we might want to attract. It strikes me that your idea makes sense, that we should allocate more space to the actual activity on the lot.
So I just looked back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If we can isolate these, because they are isolated primarily from the residential areas. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to look further.
Okay, Amy?
I just compared the administrative draft to the draft we're looking at, and we did increase the proposed FAR in 3 of the districts, mixed use, coastal dependent, industrial, and neighborhood commercial from the administrative draft to this draft. So there definitely was some input somewhere along the way that pushed things that way.
Okay, so if you've got time, or if we've got money in the budget, could we just research this a little bit more and then see where other communities in California fall on their FAR ratios for these, these designations?
We'll look at some of the ones in the county, so we can compare them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I don't mean to beat a horse here. Okay, so moving on to 319, and then we'd already talked about table LU2 on 321, 322, 323, 324. We're getting into implementation actions. I have a note. Does anybody else have anything up to that point? I just have a little note here on LU5, and I think maybe we could add to that statement and continue to implement the North Main Street specific plan through the actions in this plan and the actions in the specific plan. I think that's one of the areas that we're going to be revising and updating. So if we could just maybe add that statement into that sentence until it's revised and updated. So unless that's just would be obvious, and we wouldn't need to state that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think we have an implementation to update the North Main specific plan, do we?
Well, wouldn't we be doing it with the character review and the community design?
I think wouldn't that be part of it? That'll probably be a standalone, separate effort, for design guidelines.
Okay. Okay, then 3-25, 3-26. And then I just have another note on here, just that we've already talked about it, about just people moving to this area because of the COVID exodus. 3-27, we've got goals and policies. 328, 329, 30.
Go back to 27.
Okay.
The one thing about the 3.1, continue to limit. Could we take that out and say continue to encourage the amount of development to a level supported by adequate? That's one of those words that makes it seem like we're trying to restrict development. We want to encourage development. We're underdeveloped relative to all these indices in the housing element and things like that. So we want to, put a word of encouragement there, that we want to continue to encourage the amount of development, including future population growth, accommodated to a level supported. We're not trying to exceed it. We're trying to get it to the point that we can support it.
So which item was that, Michael?
That was LU 3.1, growth limits. It's just a reversal of the word limit, which sounds discouraging to encouraging. And maybe we want to keep it discouraging, but it seems to me like we're trying to boost the resident population. We're trying to attract business. We're trying to attract, some of these new industries that potentially are there. So we want to encourage the development, not limit it.
Makes sense to me.
I'll nod my head on that.
We did get specific edits from Coastal Commission staff on this one, so I'm trying to pull that up to make sure there's no conflict. I don't think there is.
So just a comment, or just anytime we're limiting stuff, we're raising the prices of it, or we're raising the costs. So
that's essentially what's been going on here not necessarily here in Morro Bay, but, up and down the North Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Cindy and Scott, the edit that Coastal made was accommodate future growth. And then somehow through our discussions, it ended up as continue to limit the amount of development. So I don't see that they would disagree with the suggestion, but I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with the change. I didn't recall that being, I don't think that should be objectionable to them.
Yeah, I'm seeing the edit and then the comment, and I don't see a conflict.
Yeah.
I just would not want to cede something where someone could use the policy to try to restrict development, because we're saying we're trying to limit development. When we're actually in a difficult position, we're trying to encourage development.
Okay, I think we got agreement on that. Good catch, Michael.
Could you state the edit one more time so I make sure I got it right?
Yeah, I think what makes sense is to say continue to encourage the amount of development, including future population growth accommodated, blah, 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 to a level supported by adequate and long-term sustainable. So basically it's just the word limit to continue to encourage. We want to be seen as positive to the people who come in and talk to Scott and staff about the development.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're up to 332. Does anybody have anything up to that point?
I had something on 329.
Okay.
And I think this was something that Coastal did under coastal dependent uses. They did remove the word energy. So they have commercial fishing and boating, agriculture, and aquaculture facilities. And I guess maybe Scott or Amy can explain their reasoning behind, or Cindy, behind removing energy from that. But, when we're talking about wind or wave energy or whatever other future potential ocean source energies might come up, that is going to be coastal dependent. So, is there any...
I was very curious about that too, because when I was going through the statements, it's one of those ones that it's like, well, are they assuming that when we say energy, we're talking about old energy, like another power plant that was
right
there. And, this type of thing where the commercial fishing, yeah, it's the fish are in the ocean. Aquaculture, it's because you have to use the bay to do that. Well, these sea-based or sea-located, could we, do you think there's any wiggle room in that to get those pieces back in there? Because again, I would say somebody might use that clause that it's not in there as a coastal dependent use to limit the potential of developing the energy source.
Yeah.
So maybe we
discussed this with them quite a bit. My recollection is it came down to a definition in the Coastal Act that they felt very strongly about. And they said it was fine if we moved this discussion out of the coastal dependent use section, which we did. It's on page 435. And I can try to look back to see if I can find more notes from that discussion right now, but I don't know, Cindy and Scott, if you have any other recollection.
That was my exact recollection of it, actually, is they objected to the location underneath the coastal dependent uses section. And they were concerned how that might be construed. And so we moved a lot of that language out in a couple different places. Even on the next page on 3-30, you have energy and industrial uses where we mention, reuse of the power plant, where we mention, what else is in here? Future potential energy uses in Morro Bay, renewable energy, which is on page 330. So we just moved it out of that coastal dependent section and moved it down a little bit. And then there's also on the, I think, what'd you say, 3-35?
435.
435, yeah. Okay.
So I guess, maybe it's covered well enough, if it is in other places and people can be flexible about referring to it.
We went round and round with them on especially the wind energy and that type of thing, and there was no biting on their part. They weren't going to change.
It could be that that's such a new thing, and the clause says "and are highly protected by the Coastal Act." So if it's not protected by the Coastal Act and it's an "and" clause, then that may be one of the reasons they want to try to keep it out.
And they took a very narrow definition of a coastal dependent use. Is its function dependent on being located on or adjacent to the coast? So as Scott said, they really took issue with that as it being consistent with the definition in the Coastal Act.
Because wind and wave energy does kind of depend on, if you're talking about offshore wind energy.
Yeah.
Yep,
that's not the stuff on the hills back there.
That was the argument they made. They were not willing to budge.
Yeah.
Wow.
What about support industries such as maintenance and supplies? So for offshore energy, for wind or wave. So basically you're going to have tenders and you're going to have maintenance boats for each of those industries. You're going to have construction tugs and cranes and stuff like that. So those are definitely coastal dependent. You're not going to be bringing them in from Fresno.
Not getting in there.
Okay.
My opinion. We had an at-length discussion with them, and they were pretty rigid right here, and said that there was. I didn't go look it up, but they did tell us that this has been reviewed on several other LCPs, and this is the language that they use, and things are willing to accept, things are not. They were pretty black and white was my recollection on this. Actually, looking back at my notes now, I said we're not getting anywhere with this.
Okay, and then so Scott, what about the battery storage plant at the PG&E site? There, is that going to be caught up in this then?
No, I don't think it's an issue.
Mentioned.
No,
that's on page 435 as well.
Okay.
So
they didn't have any issue with these things in general. They just didn't want them in that section, which is why we dispersed them elsewhere.
Okay.
So we got reference to those items in the document. We just didn't put them under coastal dependent because they didn't like that.
You snuck them in. You guys are good. Thank you.
They were fine with it. That's what they suggested. They were like, "Hey, you can just put them someplace else." We're okay.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Okay. So anything up to 332, we have the pending use map. Any questions or comments on any of that? Okay. So then we're into agriculture and aquaculture, goals and policies on 4.1. So we're in from 333, 334.
So on 335, I just had a slight minor issue, and it's not a big deal, with using master plan as a verb. And I saw actually it was a suggestion from a comment, I think, from a GPAC person, but master plan the redevelopment of the former Vista power plant site. I would just say create a master plan, but that's kind of just sort of hits my English abilities a little wrong, but not a huge issue.
I wouldn't have a problem with that change.
What change? What are we changing?
Just say create a master plan under Vista site master plan. Create a master plan rather than using master plan as the verb.
Okay, can I get one other commissioner to nod their head in agreement? Okay, I got 3. Thank you.
Okay, so we're 335, 336, 337, 338, 339, 340. We're in the goals and policies on 340 and 341. The IAs, the implementation actions on 341. And Scott, just for something general, could we run the fading on this? I know we changed this once before, but the page numbers, could we run the fading the other direction? so that the page numbers on the bottom are more of a contrast in the blue and the black. In some lightings, it's hard to read. It's better than it was before.
So is the issue that it's hard to read in the printed version?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just switch the fading, so it's lighter on the bottom and darker at the top. I don't know if that makes any difference for design-wise, but it wouldn't seem to.
Maybe.
So, does anybody else have a problem with that, or on their printed versions? I have a hard time even reading it now.
It's better than it was.
Yeah.
I see in the printed version, I'm looking at it too, and it is, I mean, you can see it better than you did before, but it is not great. It's electronically, it looks great.
I think that shadow box can be shortened so that the page number is just outside of it, but
Ooh.
There you go.
Good idea.
So it's just below the blue instead of inside the blue, but
Yeah.
that's just my own viewing of the document. Placeworks are the experts on that design.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question.
I don't think it's a huge deal to change it. We hoped we would have gotten it right at this point, but we'll take a look.
Okay, thank you. I'm picking nits here.
On 341, can we, the LU 6.10, is that the way that wants to be read, since we now are getting close to having a vacation rental ordinance? Is it permits allocated each year in the residential zone? Is that the right way to state that?
What are we on? I'm sorry.
This is the short-term vacation rental permits one, LU 6.10 on 3-41.
I mean, it's fine. You're right. I mean, we're going to have the ordinance in place. I mean, this envisions itself being adopted well before now. But I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't change what we're doing, and that's, we're going to second reading next week at council for final adoption of the vacation rental ordinance before we send it off to coastal. I don't know. I mean, if you want to change some of the language, I feel free, but I don't think it affects what we did or what we've done to this point at all.
I guess the only thing I would say is it to manage the number of new short-term vacation permits relative to caps.
Should we just refer to the short-term vacation rental program, or?
Well, it's not adopted yet, so no. That's what I'm saying. This is general enough, so it does. There's nothing that it can run afoul of, even if there's a change made on next Tuesday.
Okay.
If you add cap in and they get rid of a cap, then then it's not consistent. If it's written this way, which is very general, it does exactly what it says there. That's what the draft ordinance does. Regulates the amount of permits that we issue in a year, regulates them overall, how many we have total in the city.
It shuts down
residential zone.
Okay, so everybody good with that? Okay. So 342, 343, 344.
On 44, this is one of the ones where it says agreed on edits but needs a bit more wordsmithing. I'm not quite sure on LU 7.1. So are we not sure 7.1's right? Has the wordsmithing been done?
Yes, the wordsmithing has been done.
Okay, so that's what you think is adequate, then. And
Did everybody have time to read Paul Van Beurden's lengthy letter that came in today?
No, I haven't. I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a group, the Embarcadero Master Leaseholders, and they had quite extensive comments on all these various areas that do relate to the leasehold issues. And, for me, it's always good to hear from the people who are in the areas that are actually dealing with the issues as business owners or whatever the area is. So it might be good to, we could go through this, but then perhaps come back to it after we've reviewed his comments. A lot of it has to do with sort of the punitive challenges of providing lateral access and at the same time being aware of sea level rise and making floating things and paying in lieu fees if you are unable to do it, which in some ways doesn't seem fair, because if it's impossible to do something appropriately and environmentally in an environmentally sound way, to make you pay for something that you really can't do doesn't seem fair. So there were quite a few things that he brought up from this group.
Well, one of the things I had a real question on as far as the floating lateral access is, how is that going to fit in with the berthing and docking and slips that are down there and eelgrass protection and all of that too? I mean, it's.
Well, he brought up the levels of the buildings, and if you raise up, your floating walkway areas, but the buildings remain low, and then how do you do handicap accessibility going up and down? So he brought up a lot of things. I wish we'd had it sooner.
Yeah. How do you guys want to handle that? This seems like a pretty major section of the document. Because it is lateral access, and then there's the other thing with the California Coastal Trail. There's also the idea that the lateral access and the bay access goes from Tideland Park to the state park. There's issues all around this too. So do we want to pull this item and review it more on our next session and skip past this and then come back to it, or do we want to muddle through this now? What's the consensus?
I'm fine to look at the correspondence. I know it came in late. I pulled a copy of it, but I didn't have a chance to read it. I did see the California Coastal Trail comments that came to us as well. But, I do think that it's fine for those folks to have an opinion, but it's a larger goal of the city to provide lateral access. And that's one of the big Coastal Commission things, too. So I'll be very curious to see how they challenge some of these issues that they're bound to have to respond to by the leasehold. I don't think that's something to necessarily back away from, because some people have found problems with it. The worst part of the city on the waterfront, I feel, are the places where we haven't been able to put the walkways in. Mm-hmm. We've got huge gaps there where you have to walk through parking lots when we're trying to have people be able to go from the Rock all the way down to the marina. I'm very cautious about changing the intent that's gone through lots of reviews outside. But I'm happy to read the correspondence to get a better idea of what their thinking is.
Well, maybe what we could do, Jerry, is just go through it now with whatever thoughts and comments we have, and then as people review that, we could always revisit it next time we look.
Okay. How does the rest of the commission feel about that? And Scott, how do you?
It's up to the commission. You received the correspondence. A lot of this stuff's kind of weedy. Yeah. And directly related to coastal act policy, so things we can't change. Mm-hmm. Not all of it. Not all of it's that way. I haven't had a chance to read all of it. I actually, kind of skimmed through it, literally right before you hopped on the call, because I was kind of getting stuff prepped for the meeting. So I haven't had a chance to really dig into it.
Okay, just, my thoughts on it, like Michael, the best thing we've done is, require lateral access on any development across there to get access, to get public access and viewing to the bay. And the worst thing that's happened is they're around, on the Great American, GAFCO, and right in there, that lateral access just does not work. And it's just, it's ridiculous. There is no that was the worst accommodation of lateral access that's happened. One of the greatest joys that I see people do is walking, the boardwalk down to Tidelands Park. You see hundreds of people, using that every day. And some people, that's their form of social interaction. So anything that we do to restrict that, I think, would be really detrimental to the city.
Yeah, and I was at work and printed it out, and so in between customers, I was kind of like, "What is he saying here?" There are some things like talking about number C, change in use, change in land use designation, change in intensity of use, or change of use would trigger, I guess, is what his interpretation was, the need to add this lateral access. And he said if it was some, because they have those big leaseholds, right? But within that, you have these little tiny stores. So somebody turns a coffee shop into a retail store. Does that trigger it? And is that little minor kind of change of use going to make them put hundreds of thousands of dollars into not only creating the lateral access, but the studies that go along with it and eelgrass protection and all that? And maybe it is. But, their feeling was, as business people, that this would be quite the challenge.
Well, I think that, there is a responsibility for the leaseholders down there, along with the opportunity they have to make an economical go of it. It is also this responsibility to the community and to the greater, the greater California population too, that they have access to that's not just a commercial venture to control the bay. And it also, the other thing too is the better that works for all of us, the more economically viable each of those individual sites will be.
Right. And
that gets lost in the day-to-day. So back. Okay, so on the California Coastal Trail, does the California Coastal Trail go along the bayside lateral access, or what is the?
No, because the California Coastal Trail has to include bicycling. So there's different situations in different parts of the city, but my understanding is along the Embarcadero, it is officially the street. And then any other access that's on the bayside can be utilized by coastal trail users, but the official trail needs to allow for biking and walking.
Okay.
And also it needs to be accessible 24 hours a day. So that was another piece of that analysis as well. Sorry.
Okay. And then our lateral access does not need to be accessible 24 hours a day, from what I understand. Right. So
it's always safe to be on all of it. Like I guess it depends on the user, but yeah, the main criteria had to do with biking and walking.
Okay, so who wants to attempt an LU 7.1 review or comments on that?
Going on down, and of course we discussed it at length in what I call the geo projects. Under LU 7.1H, and then the little Roman numerals 3, I think that the restrictions for no more than 30 minutes prior to and after a certain activity, I don't think that's realistic. If you're talking about fishing boats coming in and forklifts and preparing and getting ready to offload volumes of whatever they're bringing in, and then processing it, getting it to refrigeration, getting it off again, I think it would be good to have language that's a little more general. that just says areas may be restricted with movable chains and signage for no more than is necessary to complete the activity, something like that. So, we're supposed to be a working waterfront, give those fishermen and working waterfront folks the ability to actually function.
See, I disagree with that, Susan. This allows you to do 30 minutes prior to the activity, you can close it off. And then the activity, as long as the activity goes on, if you're offloading for all day, then that activity is going on all day as long as you're actively offloading. And then 30 minutes after you finish offloading, you open up the access again. That's how I read that.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Okay. I could live with that reading of it. Somehow
that was the intent. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't just that they only had 30 minutes.
Okay.
But I did see what the comment letter said, so I think it is important to make it clear if there is wording that helps make it more clear. But it was definitely, whatever needs to happen happens, and then to try to get it, when they're totally done.
When you're done, then you have 30 minutes to open it up. Yeah, that would make a whole lot more sense. Okay.
And I didn't have any problems with reading on this. If somebody has better clarification on it, this is pretty much the language that was in the GEO project.
Mm-hmm. And this policy 7.1, I think if that's where you're at, this is another one that Coastal heavily edited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The 30-minute language came from the Planning Commission. Just FYI.
Okay. And I'm happy with that. Maybe we did something good in the world. Probably not. Okay. So let's, unless somebody else has anything on LU 7.1, then we'll move on to LU 7.2 and to LU 7.8.
So one of the things Paul pointed out was LU 7.3. Furniture, windscreens, gates, fences, and other items shall not be placed in the area of pedestrian flow of a lateral access way. Existing items of this sort shall be removed during future lease renewals or applications for improvements. But then you have policy LU 7.5, coastal access amenities, provide clear signage and amenities such as benches, picnic tables, trash and recycling service, bike racks, etc. So he thought those were contradictory. First you're saying you shouldn't have them there, and then you're saying you should have them there because people need a place to sit or to eat or to, appreciate.
See, I don't think they conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you have a 10-foot wide access way. There's not supposed to be anything in it. If you're going to have benches out there, those are outside of there. If you're going to have trash cans, they're outside of that access way. That's the issue that we have is several of the lease sites have put things out in there. I mean, and I understand they might put benches or might have a chair out there or they might have a planter. I don't know, but those things aren't supposed to be there. That area is supposed to be for public access. If you're going to put those things out there, then you have extra wide areas to put the benches and those types of things, just not in that public way. So I think that's the intent of the other policy is to clean those things that are in those required public access ways up and not have them there because it does restrict the ability to walk through those areas.
A really good example of that is the Harbor Walk Plaza project at 833 Embarcadero. That was approved with more than 10 foot of lateral access so that they'd have their 10-foot requirement and then extra room for tables and benches and whatnot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I've got are we anybody else on that item? Okay. LU 7.2, the lateral access requirements. It says lateral public access along the waterfront revetment shall be provided in all new development and rehabilitation or addition projects, consistent with public safety needs and the needs to protect public rights of private property held by leaseholders in natural resource areas from overuse. Okay, I have, from the point of consistent with public needs and private property rights held by leaseholders, I have a problem with that statement being the fact that that may be able to be used to resist putting in the lateral access at all. You know. So, Scott, have we had the lawyer look at that, or, you know, those clauses seem to contradict everything else we've said in this whole paragraph, in this whole section.
Amy, where did this language come from? Do you remember? So,
No, I'll have to look that one up.
I don't.
The notes say the coastal staff edited that one, but it doesn't say how. But it also says checked and no conflict with PC or GPAC. So
this was exactly the argument that we had at, you know, at Geo's, that they used this argument to say that they didn't want to do any lateral access originally, because it was public safety, quote unquote.
The original, the previous draft, it was LU 7.1, lateral access, improved lateral connections along the coast with particular emphasis on the Embarcadero, and ensure such connections are universally accessible, and that's it.
I would just like to eliminate all of the second half of that.
I'm just trying to research back where that came from.
It's going to be protected.
Doesn't look like it was an edit from Coastal.
Yeah. Any EIR that's done, or any, you know, we're going to, you know, natural resources are going to be preserved through the, you know, through the biological reports and eel gas reports, and public safety is just going to is a noted. It's a standard that we deal with. So, but I see this as a clause that they can use to resist everything else in this section.
This whole section was this moved or something by Coastal from someplace?
Possibly, yeah. I'm not seing. Yeah. I'm trying to find it in the land use element previously.
Yeah, I'm looking at the thing. It shows us all new text.
It was moved, and I think that's why it's confusing, because it might have been, and I could be wrong, that the LU7 was numbered as LU4 in the public draft. So we did large sections of cutting and pasting. So.
I'll keep looking. I have not found where it was previously yet.
So, Jerry, I would be comfortable with that whole paragraph if it just eliminated rights of private property held by leaseholders. So you keep consistent with public safety needs and the need to protect public rights and natural resource areas from overuse.
I would like to get with consistent, but, you know, I would like to eliminate it at consistent, because it's going to, you know, it's going to be reviewed, and it's good for all of those items. It's going to be reviewed, and we're not going to, you know, we're not going to essentially do anything that's going to create a public hazard. And our biological reports will protect the natural recess areas from overuse. And it'll be, so I think we've got enough protection in there, but I just see that whole clause as something to slide in there as a basis to resist lateral access at all.
I'm thinking it might have been in the implementation and it got moved up. So I'm checking that out right now.
Jerry, so the provision suggests that there's a balancing of public and private rights. And then your suggestion is that by making that balance explicit, we're sort of inspiring or giving ammunition to the general leaseholders to find an excuse to fight the initiative? That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. That this would be grounds. I don't want to be too dramatic, but this would basically be the grounds that they could do a court action to say that I'm not putting lateral access because it infringes on my my property rights.
Well, the only comment I'll make is that, you know, whether it's in here or not, they're still going to make that argument. And
yeah, but this doesn't, but having it in here, that's our document saying that we support their point of view. So that's...
Well, you could take the opposite approach, and you could argue that by including it, there's evidence that we're actually doing the balancing effort and taking their rights into consideration and coming to the conclusion that no, you have to install these things. You see what I'm saying? It's like... Yeah, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree that the argument should win. I'm not sure I agree, though, that somehow putting it here weakens our position that being equal, you know.
Joseph, I just heard this argument on every project that's come before us. You know, just, you know, in private and in public, and it just throws up a red flag for me. Mm-hmm. That I want to be on our strongest ground we can stand on. That's all.
Well, we all agree that it should come out, right? I mean, I think is that not the issue?
Yeah, let's raise your hands if you think that should come out or not.
Can you tell me which clause it is one more time?
It's LU 7.2. It's on page, if I could read the page numbers, 3-47. And it's lateral access requirements. And it states lateral public access along the waterfront revetment shall be provided in all new developments and rehabilitations or addition projects. Period. I say it should be period there. And the qualifying clauses behind that basically, you know, to me, negate the whole first part of that statement.
I don't know where it came from, but I'm not even sure why we have it if we have 7.1.
It might be in the existing LCP.
It came from LU 18.
Yeah, so it was in section 5.2.
In the implementation, on page 5.8 in the older version, and the verbiage is all in there, but there is no implementation action in the section 5 of the current version. So it doesn't exist.
So that's one where Coastal asked us to roll up the implementation into the policy, but they didn't actually comment on the implementation, to my knowledge. So I don't think there's any issue with your proposed change. Mm-hmm. But we could do a little more research to see where it came from originally. It may have actually been in the existing LCP because there is some lateral access language in there.
Well, to me, it doesn't matter really where, you know, I'm not so concerned about where it came from. I just don't want it to, I would rather not it remain. So I got a thumbs up from Jesse. Do I have a thumbs up from Michael? And we got
I don't object to removing it. I mean, I'm sort of.
And then Susan, how do you feel?
I would still rather keep the language about public safety needs, public rights, and natural resource areas, just because I think that can always be stated as a concern. And I think there could conceivably be legitimate times when that does become an issue.
And honestly, if you look at 7.1, it says all that in there. It gives you, like, you cannot provide public access, lateral access, if you can meet the requirements in 7.1. So I'm not even sure what 7.2 does.
Yeah, so maybe just take the whole thing out. But then you need new numbers.
7.1, it covers like the whole thing in much greater detail, and then we have 7.2. It's like a condensed version of it. Yeah. It should be like the lead in to 7.1.
Okay.
So it does seem like maybe these were, you know, discordant pieces that were put together, and when you actually read them one after the other, I'm sort of wondering why it's there.
Okay, so in the minimum, I would say let's eliminate the from the end of projects. And if you want
I could go along with that. I'm okay.
Okay, so let's just eliminate that if it doesn't cut across Coastal Commission.
If anything, they'll love it.
So what I was saying is in 7.1 under H, it says exceptions. The lateral access requirements specified above may be waived in the following situations, and there's 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is that the 7.2 basically sort of is like a summary of 7.1, a very brief one.
Okay.
Occam's razor, get rid of it.
All right, you guys want to take a few minute break here? How's everybody doing? You want to keep plugging on, or you?
We're just getting into it, Jerry.
Okay, well let's keep going then.
So are we amending that one, or are we getting rid of it?
That's good.
I'd be fine to get rid of it.
If you get rid of it, you have to change all your numbers. Does that hurt your feelings?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, staff and.
Oh, so is it easier to change the language and remove it then?
Well, if it's easier to just knock off the second half of it and leave it in there, so your numbers don't have to change again.
Yeah, I would be perfectly happy with that.
I don't think that should be your decision.
Okay.
You don't even know how many number changes. You saw. We did a lot of number changes.
I have a list I'm going to send to you of things that don't quite match up, but I figure we don't need to discuss it in public. So, yeah.
I'd actually be happy with it with the second part of that clause gone. You know, just
after projects.
Pardon?
Yeah.
So stop after projects.
Yeah. Period. And then
period. Strike through. Okay, so we're through 347. Anything? Okay, let's just double check back. Do we have anything prior to 347 that's an issue? Okay, so 348. Just, you know, I just had a little bit clarification on LU 7.6.
Yeah.
Is that the North Morro Bay planning area? Is that, you know, the Chevron property at North Main Street, or is that the Dog Beach? It didn't.
I was wondering the same. I was wondering, did the Dog Beach purchase, that went through, right? So
no, we just got literally, we just got agreement from the CSD on the purchase agreement, literally end of last week.
But does that need modification because of anything since we started this whole thing? 7.6.
No, I mean,
that would still be required.
Yeah.
I mean, there is access currently and it would remain, right?
Correct. I mean, in fact, the permits that the CSD got for their outfall, you know, has dedication requirements for public easements over the beach as well. So it's public. The city acquires it.
So were they also talking about you know, access, you know, I guess that would be vertical access underneath the bridge to the open space on the east side of Highway 1?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that part, you know, might eventually, I think in like the third or fourth phase, you know, the idea would be that would become public as well, at which point you could achieve that. But at this point, it's not, because it's privately held, and will be maintained privately held by Chevron until they clean it up. It's one of the parcels that has contamination on.
Okay, so then
And 7.2 is from the existing LCP. It's policy 1.26.
Okay, let's get rid of it. So then we get into the LU 7.8, the sea level rise impacts on lateral access. And from what Susan said, I didn't read the letter, so it seems like that was the most. This to me came up with a lot of headaches, on implementation. And so was that. I imagine that was main point of Van Buren's letter.
I don't see anything from. Am I missing? I don't see anything in the letter from 7.8.
They talked about the floating access requirement in front of Great American Fish Company and a couple of leaseholds right there, and saying, well, it's already there, so why is this in here? And my thoughts on that was, well, there's something this is a long-term plan, so memorializing that over the course of the plan.
Preferably, we would have both at some point if that site were to redevelop. We would like to have both. I mean, it can't extend beyond to the north of it because that's the Vistra/Dynegy parking lot, and so that's one of the reasons why it was approved the way that it was, because we couldn't extend it along the bluff top in that location.
Well, yeah.
But I don't think it's any reason to change this. I mean, we require lateral access over all floating docks in the city now. Standard requirement for Coastal Commission, I think, stemming from this project.
Right.
So they didn't used to do this. So once they started doing this, they started requiring on all floating docks.
I think we ought to have this as aspirational as possible.
Me too. Okay, so
the comments in the letter are getting at, what happens when there really is an impact from sea level rise and things really do need to be raised. And at that point, it is a serious issue. But I think that's a little different than, when you have a lease renewal and then closer near term.
Well, on this also in here, if memory serves correct, they were talking about raising all the utilities to, above the walking docks and stuff because of sea level rise and stuff. So when you're getting into that, you're basically, we're going to be, raising the height of the whole Embarcadero. I mean, it's not going to be. It would be better to put a couple EV charging stations and not have greenhouse gas, not have the sea level rise. So, than having to do all this.
But I'm looking at the Coastal Commission comments again, and I'm not seeing they had anything to do with this part. This was our part, right? That was in the original piece.
A lot of it comes from the sea level rise study.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Coastal would have had comments if it wasn't in there. It's hard to say. But like the underdeck utilities, that's actually more of a near term or midterm solution than raising the whole Embarcadero. That came from that study.
Okay, so let's move past that item, and then after review, on our next session we can, if there's more questions on it, we can come back and go through that again. So then on 3-50, we're implementation actions. Anybody have anything on 350? Okay. So 351, we're downtown and waterfront areas. Master plan for Morro Rock. 352, multimodal access, vacant lots. I'd just like to say on this vacant lots, I think the city has tried and failed numerous times to utilize the vacant lots around this community. I think with better outreach. I don't know how we would do it, but working with the property owners and creating some kind of a revenue stream for them that they could enjoy, that we could have temporary uses on their properties and protect them from any liabilities. It just comes to mind both the area around the little donut shop down on the Embarcadero. Lost the name of it right now.
Sons and Buns.
Sons and Buns, and then also that corner where the Chevron gas station used to be on the corner of Main and Beach Street. Those vacant lots are just eyesores. That they could have been. I don't know. You could have food trucks parked there, once a month, or you could have festivals. You could have, if you could get the property owners to allow, kiosks and,
even parking. Nice parking lots, Neil Farrell suggested a merry-go-round. I love that,
Yeah, pony rides.
Yeah. Well, if Prop 15 passes, maybe with their property taxes going up, they will be looking for other ways to make money instead of just sitting on that. It is a shame. It's a shame. There's a lot of beautiful potential for property there, and it's.
Yeah, and temporary uses that do not create, prescription rights on anything that they're specifically stated that they have full rights to development at any time. Mm-hmm. It just seems like a waste of resources. Could have been better, but okay. So much for my proselytizing on that. Okay, 353, we're on LU 8.1.
8.4, did we want to leave that in, given that when the idea of doing a one-way or full closure of the Embarcadero during the COVID time, they pretty much soundly rejected it, or?
Times may change.
Times could change.
Yeah. I would like
a good idea.
Yeah, I think it would have been worth really trying it, but I don't have a business down there, so.
And I think it's good to keep in here because even when we suggested doing it as part of the the economic response to COVID, the idea was to do it temporarily. We were going to implement it on like I said, we told the business owners we could implement it, put some temporary bollards down the middle of the street, and leave it open. Say, Monday through Thursday, and then use it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So only point there is at some point it might be worth a sort of pilot project that folks might be interested in to try it for a weekend or two. And we could do that. And we would have a policy here that supports that. So I think it's maybe good to keep it in there because people's ideas may change over time, and being able to test it out would be the thing that could change their mind. So.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so next page, 340. So we're LU 8.6. And then I just have, on this to include investigate paid parking and to fund for city improvements or business improvements.
Well, yeah, we're in the process of doing that now.
Yeah.
But we have a study we've contracted for now. That's underway.
Do we need to include that in here for?
I mean, I don't think anything beyond what's already in here. I think it's covered in here.
It's covered. Okay, great. So moving on through 355. Anything else come up? So then we come into the community design, the 357. So we're 3C. What time is it? So 345. What's the consensus? How long do we You guys want to go on this?
As long as you want to go, I'm here.
Okay, Michael?
Do you mean for a break or the whole evening?
Either or. There is a World Series game going on, guys.
It's over. Dodgers won.
Oh, damn.
Too bad.
Spoiler alert.
And Jerry was taping it. He didn't want to know that.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't listening to it this whole time, I promise.
This is what my son does when there's a big game. He's like, Mom, don't talk to me. Don't tell me. I don't open my phone. If he has to work and he's going to tape the game, don't talk about it.
Yeah, and then you hear it on the radio driving home. That's what drives you nuts.
You don't want to see what everybody's got on their screen. So, I would say a break would be fine. I've penciled in. I thought we'd be here till 10. I mean, I think go as far as we can go on the thing.
Okay, we're on a new section, community design. Let's go to Dick 5, and then let's 840. You guys want to take 5 or 10?
Okay.
Okay, so what do you guys want, 5 or 10?
Let's do 5.
Okay, so let's come back at 8:50 and we'll try this again. So let's bring it back and working on community design. 357. We've got overview and scope, visions for communities. Then we got figure C-1. So Scott, where did this map come from?
It was created for this. Was created for the general plan to identify the different planning areas inside the city.
Okay, and then it just seems like the agriculture east of Highway 1. It doesn't show any agricultural out 41 or Little Morrow Road. Is that out of our
outside city limits?
Outside city limits. Okay.
And this is more of a way to group the areas into, some of them are neighborhoods, some of them are, like the agriculture is not so much of a neighborhood. So it's not so much of a land use exercise in terms of what is there, but how can we kind of group things into unique areas with certain character in the city.
Okay. And then, so 360, the only thing I have on that is on the North Morro Bay. Should we say anything about, trying to create landscaping and change that fencing along Highway 1 on Main Street and new signage and, beautification of the because that whole area has been a blight coming in from the north of the community, north of Morro Bay all the way through to Morro Bay Boulevard. The chain link fencing and no landscaping and signage and stuff has always been a problem with Caltrans.
Do we have anything in here for that, or?
It does talk about screening landscaping, enhancing public views of the area and its surroundings as seen from Highway 1.
I think we really need to get a beautification project for that.
You know,
does that belong in
the
here?
strategic plan that refers to that area? I was thinking we had some policy written down somewhere about it because I remember sitting through a couple of different meetings on it, but it was the economic development strategic plan that talks about.
Yeah, I'm just looking in the economic development element to see if we have anything.
Okay.
You know, at one point, I don't know how many years ago, Caltrans did come forward with a presentation to the Planning Commission about a beautification project on that section. And then we never saw them again.
Yeah.
So we basically call for implementing that plan in the economic development element. So it doesn't get into that level of detail.
Yeah, it is one of the implementation items for that plan.
Okay. Is that sufficient? You guys think that's sufficient, or?
Well, we have the economic development element that refers to it, is what Amy was saying. And so, I mean, it tells us to go do that. And again, we have that plan. So, and it's adopted by the city council. Was adopted.
Okay. Okay, then moving through the other sections of town. Downtown, Highway 1 commercial, that's 355. The agricultural, the Moral Heights element. And then I know Michael had on the previous to change the photos. Was that done, or? Okay.
They're nicer photos. I like.
Yes.
On the North Embarcadero one, is the hotel we approved coming through? Do we know about that? I guess what I'm interested in is we've got it's very specific there about 2 hotels and 2 RV parks, but I think there's multiple tiny RV parks there too. There's a couple private ones, and so do we want to say something more general about its RVs and hotels, its visitor serving aspect? It's at the bottom of 361 under the description.
I don't think the newly approved hotel motel would have been captured here.
Yeah.
Since we didn't. I don't think we knew about that last time we reviewed.
Could we say recreational vehicle parks and city wastewater treatment plant and motels are located on the north end? I mean, it just gets us away. I don't know. That's just. It sounds like the document's going to be dated by the time it gets finished.
So just delete the word "to."
Yeah, just take the numbers out.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the city wastewater treatment plant's not going to be there either.
It envisions that though, that it's going away.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing I like about the Moral Heights, the new photos, is the good representation of all of our utility lines that are strung through the whole city.
So pretty.
So bringing that up, I don't know if this is the place with Scott or Amy. This has always been where beautification goes to die is the utility lines and PG&E. Is there any way to envision a process or someplace to put this as a goal that we would like to underground the utility lines in the residential areas?
We've already included that. It's policy C9.9 in the conservation element, and then I think there's an implementation action as well.
Okay.
C34. I think that was in response to your review of the public draft.
Okay. I'm sure I've griped about it before, so. Okay, so thank you. So moving on, we've got on 368, we got key issues. Does anybody have anything on that page or on that section? I've got one item, but it's just on policy CD 1.3 on the design guidelines. Would just like to include streetscape in the design guidelines and standards, and it should be compatible and tailored to each area's character. So I don't know if we've got that anywhere else other than in the circulation section.
What did you want to add? I'm sorry.
On design guidelines, so we're talking about distinct areas and characters. It includes streetscapes and design guidelines and standards, and they should be compatible and tailored to each area's individual character. So when we do the design guidelines, to include in each one of those design guidelines the streetscapes for that particular area. Because the Quintana area is going to be different than the North Morro Bay area, which is going to be different than the Embarcadero, which should be different than the residential areas.
Everybody good with that, or at least two other people?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on past 369. 370. And then, so the only what I have, do we need to include that streetscape designs and standards in the implementation actions also?
Probably because it mostly talks about building design.
Yeah.
Can you wordsmith CD2?
It kind of says that already, doesn't it? The guidelines for each character area should be sensitive to the design objectives and unique characteristics of each area. Isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, but it doesn't specifically state streetscapes and designs and standards, which sometimes gets left out because you do building designs, but you don't do the streetscapes or the parking lots even.
So for the guidelines, I just want to be clear if you're talking about the standards or the guidelines, because they're two separate actions.
It would be both. It would be required for both. So I would think. So it seems like we would need it in the policy, and then we would need it in implementation.
I don't know. I'm hesitant to start adding stuff.
Can you add it to the CD 1.9 complementary design? I mean, you can just wordsmith the landscaping and streetscape. Or you want the guidelines?
I would think it'd be stronger in implementation and in the actions. That means you've got a specific action you're going to do. But I'll defer on that. I'm raising the point here to see if that would be most appropriate.
Well, I think it fits in action CD2, but if you needed a policy in order to provide implementation, it might be in CD1 if we don't want to add policies, which might get us in. Does that get us into coastal review if we add policies? Things? Do they want to see it again?
Well, the policy would be in CD 1.3.
They're not going to care about this part of it.
Yeah.
This does anything to do with Coastal Act.
So it could go in CD1 or it could go in CD2, I think.
So 1 is the must-dos and 2 is the guidelines. So it really depends on if, to me, it seems like it goes in the standards, but
okay,
it's up to you guys.
I'd be fine with that.
It'll be piecemeal if we don't have standards.
Right. So let's put it in the standards and I'm fine with that. Okay. Good. Have somebody else concur? We got Michael and then Joseph. Okay. Okay, then 371. 372.
372, where did I put it? Paul Van Bearden did bring up some good points I thought about implementation action CD 11 and the materials used.
Okay, I got a note on that too, so.
Yeah, he said current Harbor Walk uses fiberglass grating over eelgrass and not metal, as metal is a maintenance problem and not appropriate in all marine uses. Metal will quickly deteriorate and look terrible, and timber is not a product that should be widely used as it is subject to the marine environment and upkeep. I was thinking I would sort of rather leave that open to say something, so not specifying materials, but say that product should be compatible, low maintenance, durable, suitable for the marine environment, because they may be developing new things. Like I remember when Hardy Plank siding came along and it was the best thing since sliced bread, so I think there could be new products developed for this use. So rather than tying us into saying it's got to be metal slats or timber decking, change that language just to say it should be compatible in appearance with what's, we have existing in other areas, and durable, low maintenance, sustainable.
Is that one where we can refer to the waterfront master plan as an evolving document, or is this?
Well, they're telling us to put it in the updated waterfront master plan. So, if we don't want to put metal, we have metal ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing too, I think we need to be consistent. We need to have a consistent standard across all of the.
And didn't we? This was part of the.
We did this once.
Yeah. We went through it.
The lateral access study is where this all came from. But if it's not correct, I'm not sure if his comment about it not being used now over eelgrass is correct or not. So it seems like we want to get to the bottom of that. But I think the intent was to have direction on materials.
Okay. Well, what
come out of that study? But yeah.
What they're using now is, and what we've approved is the fiberglass slats. Mm-hmm. And then as far as the railings, we had, either hot dip galvanized or, marine grade stainless steel. So, I had a little note on here to throw in before the term metal, corrosion resistant, marine grade, and with consistent and uniform design. So, part of the problem is we're getting hodgepodges of materials out there. And so when somebody sees a different railing design, they're not sure if it's part of the boardwalk or just a private deck. too.
I'm not sure if the timber is something that is appropriate really anymore either. I mean, to keep the timber preserved, you have to infuse it with preservatives, which are really problematic environmentally, and I'm not sure it's a good sustainable material. It just may be that we want to remove things like very specific comments and refer to another waterfront design guideline or something like that. It should be consistent with design guidelines and aquatic nature of eelgrass studies. The slats are there for the eelgrass. Mm-hmm. The timber was there because that would probably in the original text way back when said timber. But I don't think we want to necessarily say anything here except to refer to another design guideline.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you too.
Whatever design guideline is, I'm not sure. I keep thinking it's in the waterfront master plan. Isn't there? Don't we have a design section in there?
The waterfront master plan was done so long ago, Michael.
Yeah.
It didn't have a consistent design standard for the railings, as far as I remember. They created a railing standard for the boardwalk, but I don't know if it was adopted throughout. But the Embarcadero master plan was done before that. So
one of the things he says here is that the city required an applicant just a couple of years ago to remove the timber decking and install the fiberglass grate so it would match the balance of the harbor walk. I think he means, I don't know, is that the composite decking stuff?
I think that
we would be using that everywhere. We would be using it where we have eelgrass.
Yeah.
Right? I don't recall it any place where we don't have eelgrass.
Yeah,
it's not a bad look, though.
The projects in the last few years where they've done this, it's all been because of eelgrass requirements.
Yeah.
And we're finding eelgrass is along the Embarcadero edge. That's where it's really growing, right? It's not growing where we want it to grow. It's growing.
Yes.
Yeah. And the last few projects have all done that cable rail does stainless steel design. The last few projects that the Planning Commission has approved.
So maybe we could just have some verbiage in there about, again, consistency with the appearance moving forward, durable, things that can withstand the marine environment. I guess we could say railing should be made of metal if it's going to hold up. Or we could just, again, keep it real general and say decking and railings shall be appropriate for the area as determined in the new waterfront master plan. So you push it off to what's, people are going to decide is actually the best way to go. I just feel like there's going to be things in the future that may be better products, and we don't want to shut ourselves into using outdated products that don't hold up well.
But it seems like to me that we should have a consistent standard for railing design so that when somebody sees that railing design, they're keyed to say that this is part of the harbor walkway.
Well, and that's a good implementation action to have a consistent design. Period.
And this thing talks about pushing that through the waterfront master plan update. So,
the way it's worded, it sounds as if this is the leading piece to put back into the waterfront master plan. And so it's like this is the chicken egg thing here. This is coming before the update of the waterfront master plan. So it talks about an aspirational continuous look for the harbor walk that Jerry's trying to get at. So I'm fine with whatever generic wording we need to get those pieces that have been recent in there included, because I think that's been a generally successful approach down there.
Yeah, I'm good with whatever Michael said.
I was good with whatever you were saying.
that's the advantage of circular logic.
Yeah.
So we can probably generalize the comment to, suggest using materials consistent with adjacent lease sites or whatever when they develop, and then developing the plan inside of the waterfront master plan as to what those materials would be moving forward or something along those lines.
I'd like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just in the front end we probably want to be consistent with the stuff that's on either side of you when they redevelop, but moving forward we probably should come up with what folks should be what those you should be using, and we could categorize those and then put them into the waterfront master plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we want to say anything about the eelgrass material, or do you think that will change over time as well? Is it important to?
It has changed over time.
Okay.
So it was metal, and then they came up with the fiberglass decking, which is better,
Okay.
So I think, and then that's going to be required by the eelgrass studies.
Yeah.
So I think we're safe in letting that float. Okay. So goal CD2, we're 373, and then 374. Everybody's gonna have a lot of comments on that, I'm sure. So we're moving into the economic development, 3D economic development, and so 375. I think we might. Let's just jump through this to, all the way to the policy and implementation actions. Does anybody all the way to say it's 385? Does anybody have comments on this whole section?
On page 376, the population of Morro Bay in 2015 was 10,640, with a projected population of 12,015 for the year 2040. I wonder if that should say projected maximum population, because I don't know that anybody really believes we're going to be up to 12,000 people by the year 2040. I don't know if that's actually a projection. That's just the limit that we can go to without changing.
12,015 is a projection. It's not the limit.
Really?
I'm not saying it will happen, but that's where that came from.
Okay.
I believe it's from Slow Fog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Susan, we could be there in 12 months the way I'm seeing these things changing.
Boy, it would be interesting. I see more people buying houses as vacation second homes than as where they're going to live. But
I don't want to be snarky, but during the vacation rental thing, everybody said that they bought their house to retire here. So surely they will all do that, right?
Oh, sure. Be snarky, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's also, just a comment, everything is, people are exiting the cities, and these are the locations they're moving to. They're moving out of New York City to Hudson Valley, outside, and they're moving from San Jose and San Francisco and LA to these areas. So I don't know. So anything we put down in this document is going to be different. Okay, so anybody else have anything else on economic development?
Skipping ahead to page 380.
Okay.
ED 1.11, home-based businesses. And I think this was added. Encourage the development of home-based businesses to support the diverse needs of business owners and provide alternative access to local goods and services. I'm not sure we want that there. I'm I think we are definitely seeing in this time people working from home, which is a very different thing. So you can be connected through your computer to your job and work from home. But one of the things with home-based businesses that has always been a concern is it going to bring excessive vehicle traffic to an area? Will there be lots of deliveries? Will there be people, are you going to set up a private practice for some kind of therapy or massage or whatever? So you're going to have people constantly going through a residential neighborhood. Are you going to be building surfboards? Are you going to, I know one, actually I know somebody who had the surfboard builders near them in a residential area with all the fumes and the noise. And then
which is illegal, by the way.
Yes, exactly. And another person who had some kind of welding business was going on right next door. So, yeah. So I think we have so many empty commercial spaces that I'm not sure we need something that encourages people to develop home-based businesses to support the diverse needs of business owners. I just somehow that I don't know if we want to provide access to local goods and services in our residential neighborhoods. Do we want somebody to run a landscaping business where they're going and doing landscape? Sure. But do we want them to be selling plants on their property? I don't know. So
me and Scott can chime in, but I'm pretty sure this would be regulated in the zoning by home occupations, which
it is.
They don't allow, like Scott was just saying, like a lot of those things are not allowed. It's pretty tightly regulated. And I think this was added actually related to the jobs housing balance issue and actually allowing people to work from home. So they're kind of the flip side of it is it could actually, improve like greenhouse gas emissions if people are not having to drive back and forth to Morro Bay all the time. But
I was going to say there's a live work concept that in a lot of our mixed use areas might work really well. I agree. I think the thing that might be important to say is to say encourage development of homemade businesses to support diverse needs according to we're allowed by zoning or something like that.
Yeah, I would just take out the provide alternative access to local goods and services because I don't think that's what you mean to do in a residential area. You mean for the homeowner to be able to do their work, easily from home, which they can do anyhow.
Your home can be, I think, outside of a single family residence. So there's homes in mixed use areas too.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is I really like this. I don't want to see it lost at all because we actually had a couple people. It was down the street from the one we looked at earlier today. Didn't they have a kind of a live work piece that they were working on, like a 2 or 3 story piece? The first floor was retail, and they were living up above. Was that one of them?
I never actually did it, though. I don't think, but.
No, but I think that's a model that I think in the future may work out really well. But I agree. I've got a business next door to me that just got approved, and it's like, no, I don't want to see businesses in residential areas, single family residential areas. But I do think home-based businesses in mixed use areas would be great. Some of those North Embarcadero places would be fine to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're missing kind of, this whole COVID thing gave us an opportunity to be at home and work from home and realize that we don't need to be central in downtown urban areas. A lot of us can do our jobs from home. I think this is what this is talking about. That's how I don't want to lose this.
I would just like to take off that last.
By the way, we have lots of these already.
Yes. Well, I had a home-based business. I was selling a integrated pest management product, but I had to, ensure that, I had deliveries maybe once or twice a month, so there was no big impact. It certainly was less than UPS, Amazon type deliveries now.
But I mean, I do plan review, and I can do plan review from home probably more efficiently than I can do it in the office. So I mean, I think this belongs here.
I guess what I see it is the access to local goods and alternative access to local goods and services suggests that people are coming into your neighborhood as a residential neighborhood to purchase a good or service, not that you're just working from home, and you could do consulting in a home office. I mean, I think all of that is appropriate, but to me, this suggests more of a retail or
I'll go back
service activity.
This is happening now, and they're now providing goods and services at our home occupations to folks that live in this town. This is happening.
Okay.
I mean, and there's a bunch of them. But I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, certainly up to you. You guys can change it if you like. I just so you understand, this is happening today.
Well, this wouldn't change the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is going to allow this anyway. So I mean,
well, the other thing too is alternative access is through these things now. I can't tell you how many people I know that are psychologists, and this is where they meet people is on Zoom. Mm-hmm. They're not coming to their house. They're doing their practice remotely. So alternative access doesn't necessarily mean physical access. Yeah.
Okay.
It can, like Scott was talking about, there's the Cottage Food Act. That's a state law. Yeah. So people, like I had a neighbor who was making baked goods at home a couple of years ago, and that's completely allowed under state law. So it is, like I was saying, in the zoning code, it is delineated. It's not just a free-for-all. But like Scott said, it's totally up to you whether you want this policy to say that or not.
So what about also expanding that to live work? To encourage live work situations or live work. Do we need to do that too, or is that handled elsewhere in the policies?
Residential code does a pretty good job already.
In the land use element, we have a implementation action to facilitate live work in the zoning code, and then it's also mentioned in general in the land use element.
So I think that's handled. I thought I saw it elsewhere, but I think you're right. Okay, so what's the consensus on this? Do we leave it as it is, or do we try to amend it?
Sounds like most people want to leave it as it is.
My vote would be leave it as it is.
Yeah, I think I would say leave it as it is.
Okay. So we got that. So let's go ahead and move on to. So does anybody have anything else through 386? So the end of this section. So. Okay, so then 3E is the circulation, and that's 387. We got circulation overview, scope and content, the transportation networks. We got some nice pretty maps, and then the roadway designations. Schematics and active transportations and other transportation components. And then moving on to the goals and policies. So we're at like 3106.
Just want to verify the figure CIR circulation 1A, all of the bike communities, class 1, 2, 3 things are shown on there the way that it's intended in the future. So that's the network that we see happening, or is this the existing one? Is this the one we aspire?
This is the build out for these types of street sections.
Okay.
So what we would be doing.
And I'm just trying to think where the bike community would have expressed itself to make sure we've got all these things right. I mean, some of those are ones that I use on occasion. I know they work. I guess it's okay. We'll get comments if it's not okay. My recollection is the bikers take a look at these things pretty carefully. We'll hear if it's not right.
Yeah, it's these are pretty standard, bike, sections, bikeway sections and stuff. The only thing differential on this too is they're starting to see the 3 foot separation delineated between the bike path and the automobile vehicle traffic, and I don't see a section like that on here. So I'm not sure if that would be in class 2.1A or something. So do we need to upgrade that one, Scott, or what page? It's page 3101. We have the three sections of bike lanes, circulation 3. That's what you were talking about, wasn't it, Michael?
Just to make sure they're all correct in terms of their ultimate connectivity, things like that.
I thought Michael was talking about figure 1A.
Yeah, that's right. I'm on figure.
Which page is that?
1A is 122 of 390 on my PDF. I don't think it's got a number. It's coming. It must be 390.
Yeah. Yeah, 390.
Oh. Okay.
So yeah, if you look at the text that describes that figure on the page before, it says that this is the plan for that network.
Yeah, where we would deploy these types of improvements.
And the safe route to school is just for the elementary school. We don't have one for the high school.
I don't know if we developed that or not.
It would seem to me with all the roundabout kind of stuff happening and the fact that we're looking at some of the higher density pieces just up the street from that, we're going to have more, if we ever get back to walking to school, if we ever get back to using the high school, that may be something we want to take a look at. I just don't know if I've ever remember seeing that either. I know when we looked at the hotel that we just reviewed a few months ago, might be a year ago now, people were asking questions about the bike lanes and the walking routes and things like that.
Yeah, they're separated bike path and co-joined with the walking path. They're together, but off the street.
Yeah, because I know there's that back route that's on here is the Class 1 bike lane through the cloisters that comes that way too, and actually walk that way a lot. Okay, well, I think it's probably fine, but we probably should have that whole West 41 from the the beach all the way up to Route 1 ought to have a master plan that takes into account maybe the safe school kind of thing.
Our bike and path master plan needs to be updated.
Who would do that? Is that Public Works or?
They're the ones that had it done originally. Yeah. I think they got grant funded for it or something. It's kind of a bike and pedestrian light plan.
We do have pursued grant funding to prepare a complete streets plan to integrate with updates to the Morro Bay Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan.
Yeah.
So it's in implementations.
I'm just looking back. We did have a focus group that was on transportation and parking and multi-generational community early on in the project. So I don't know, how many specific comments ended up being reflected here. We have done targeted outreach to those folks, some of those folks.
So Scott, if we go to 3101, it's the figure circ-3 on the bikeway cross sections. This is what I thought Michael was talking about, but it wasn't. You've got the class 2 bike lane. What I'm seeing in, like San Luis and stuff, you have the class 2 bike lane, but instead of the single white line, you have the 3-foot separation. So you have a double line with sometimes grid marks in between or dash marks in between them.
I don't have a problem having Public Works take a look at this. Rob Leivick's a big bike guy. So,
yeah.
I can have him take a look at it and see if he thinks we should be updating this or something. But again, this whole thing with the implementation things is go update your bike master plan, which would do those things. So one way or the other, it's getting picked up.
Okay.
This isn't meant to be the end all be all. This is kind of to tell you what we have and, where those things are located. And then to tell you to go update your bike and up to date.
Okay, so let's see, where were we? So I think we're up to 101, 103. So the 3105 is the planned circulation improvements. And then we go to the goals and policies. And then the implementation actions. So we're at 3109. And then policies not included in the local coastal program at 110. And then the transportation metrics. We talk about level of service and vehicle miles traveled. And then the goals and policies. And then we get into parking, the 3114. And coastal zone parking, 3115. And then you got the map of the parking areas. Circ 5. The goals and policies, 3118. You got the implementation actions.
So on the Coastal Commission comment page, it said Placeworks would rewrite 4.1. So I just wanted to look at that for a minute.
Sure.
I think that just basically talks about adequate parking. I assume most of these larger developments, they're going to have parking studies or things like that done anyway. They had to have one for the low-income housing, right? Did they
had them take a look at that? Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to need. We had a parking element. We had a parking study done at one time.
We have a parking plan that was done many years ago. It's kind of outdated, and we're doing another one now.
Okay. So I think this would be a pretty good place to stop before we get into noise. Do I have any objections to that? We can pick this one up on our next meeting from here.
It's 152 pages tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, my eyes are starting to glaze over, so.
How big's the glossary? The glossary's got to be 100 pages.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll close this item. And
so we want to continue this review because it's a noticed public hearing.
Okay, so can I get a motion to continue this item to the next scheduled? Do we want to go to the next scheduled meeting, Scott, or where? Amy, what's your schedule? Are you available?
What did you guys decide about that?
It's kind of up to you. Amy's available on the 17th, but not the 4th, which will be a Wednesday, which is be the next meeting. It'll be a special meeting. Although going through this, there hasn't been significant, changes. So I'm comfortable with Cindy and I just walking through it without Amy. If you're comfortable with that, if you'd like to have Amy here, then we can do it on the 17th. It's up to you.
Okay, I'm good with staff.
I'm good with getting through it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to continue it to the special meeting on November 4th.
I move to continue it to the special meeting on November 4th.
Seconded.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Can you call the question?
Commissioner Stewart?
Aye.
Commissioner Barone?
Aye.
Commissioner Lucas?
Aye.
Commissioner Ingraffia?
Aye.
Chair Lohr?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, so more fun coming up. So,
Thanks,
Amy.
See you guys soon.
Thanks,
okay,
Amy.
you can go watch the game now.
I'm not a Dodgers fan. I'm a Giants fan. Sorry.
All right. Okay. Then the next, we got no new business, no unfinished business. So planning commissioners' comments. We all commented out. Okay.
Up, everybody.
Scott, you got anything you'd like to add?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, so at this point, we'll adjourn to the special planning commission meeting on Wednesday, November 4th at 2020 at 6 o'clock via teleconference. So everybody stay safe.
Yeah, I would note that we're canceling the meeting on the 3rd because of the election.
Okay, so thanks. Special note.
Just providing a clarification, that's all.
Everybody out there, let's vote.
Right.
You can't gripe if you don't vote. So.
Right.
All right.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.